Signore e signori, Marco Montemagno.
Ladies and gentlemen, Marco Montemagno.
Allora, uno dei peggiori
Okay.
applausi di benvenuti
One
della
of the
storia.
worst
Ricordiamo,
welcome applauses in history.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Now wait.
Marco Montemagno. Come on! Ok. Posso fare una confessione? Allora,
Can I say
sono
something?
un po' in imbarazzo.
So
Spiego
I've got
perché. Io vivo da
quite
18 anni
embarrassed.
in
I've been
internet e
living
ieri ho
on the net
incontrato
for
uno
18
speaker.
years now,
Quindi
and yesterday I met
ospiti,
our speakers,
incontrati
some of our
ieri, e
guests. I
mentre
met
ci
them yesterday,
parlavo,
and while I was talking to
pensavo,
them,
caspita,
I
sono
thought,
veramente alla zero.
wow,
Sentivo un bambino.
this is still year zero.
Io,
I'm
18
still like a
anni,
child.
Ho intervistato Jeff Bezos,
I've
Steve
interviewed
Ballmer di Microsoft,
Jeff Bezos,
quello di
Steve
YouTube,
Ballmer,
mamma di
Microsoft, the founder of
Goldrake,
YouTube,
veramente
the mother of Goldrake,
chiunque, e poi mi ritrovo
anybody,
a parlare
and
con
then
delle persone che ne sanno
I meet
così tanto più di me,
some people
che
who
mi
know
sento
much more than I do,
imbarazzo.
and I really felt embarrassed. Have you ever seen the film Gravity?
Parlavo con uno degli speaker,
One of the speakers,
dico, ma Gravity,
and I swear it,
si parlava del film,
well, we were talking about Gravity, the film, the movie, and he said, well, I invented the technology in Gravity. And then I talked with another speaker, and he was talking about these 3D molds, 3D prints in real time
gli aerei, insomma, in
on
continuazione
planes,
incredibile.
these sort of things.
Sapete
That was incredible.
quella frase che dice
So
che
you
siamo
remember
la
the sentence
figlia
when people say
delle
that
5 persone che
we are
frequentiamo
the
di più.
average of the
Siamo la
5
media delle
people
5
we
persone che frequentiamo di
know the
più. E
best?
la cosa secondo me interessante dell'evento di
And the most
oggi è che abbiamo la
interesting
possibilità
thing
di
today
toccare
is
con
that
mano,
we can
di
really
frequentare
experience
alcuni personaggi
and
che
see
davvero hanno
some of the
suggerimenti,
people that really can give us
idee,
suggestions,
un sacco di
ideas,
consigli. Noi possiamo
concepts, a lot of
fare
advice and
alla
recommendation,
fine dei conti,
things that
un'idea
we
è quella che
can
ti cambia. Uno pensa,
really
per
make our
migliorare
own,
ho bisogno
something
di
that
un
changes you.
libro. Per migliorare
Sometimes you
magari
think,
basta
well, in order to
una
change, I
grande
need
idea.
1,000
Anche
ideas.
perché poi
No,
non
no,
si
just
può
one idea, one good
pensare
idea
in
is
grande,
enough.
pensare in
Because the
piccolo
difference
è la
between
stessa
think
cosa.
big and think small,
Oggi cerchiamo di pensare
well,
in grande
it just
sui temi
takes the
della
same effort.
mobilità.
So today we try and
Ok,
think
siamo
about
pronti?
mobility and not just that. Are you ready?
Grazie,
You want to
l'applauso,
start?
francamente.
Okay, one more applause, spontaneous applause.
Stop,
Okay,
stop,
okay.
stop, stop. Partiamo.
That's enough, that's
Allora,
enough. Let's start.
confessione numero 2. Gli speaker
Confession number
mi hanno
2.
chiesto, sono
All
americani,
our
e
speakers come
gente
from the US,
per
come from
muoverli
America,
non so come ha fatto Piaggio,
and I really
perché per muoverli
don't
è
know
veramente
how
difficile.
Piaggio
Ieri
managed
mi
to
hanno
have
chiesto
them
come sarà
here.
il pubblico
And yesterday they asked me, what is the audience like to be
pubblico
tomorrow?
caldissimo,
And I told them, well, they're going to be really hot, really hot.
Per non fare
But I haven't got a clue. So
facciamo un test, va bene?
I
Ci
want
sono studenti in sala?
to come out wonderfully. So
Wow.
let's make a
Ok.
test. Any students
Come mai?
here?
Non
Okay.
studenti in sala?
Non-students?
Ok, allora a parte che si potrebbe fare un dating,
Okay.
uno studente
We could have a
va dalla
speed date.
abbiamo già trovato
So like a student
Piaggio
and a
fast
non-student.
forward, 600
Piaggio
va
fast
bene.
forward and
Questa
600
fila,
new jobs. Okay.
voglio
This
sentire
line
il
here,
vostro miglior applauso.
your best applause,
Benvenuto per
your
voi.
best welcome applause for one guest.
Ok, questa fila miglior
And on
applauso.
this side,
Ok, va bene,
okay,
siamo
okay.
quasi. Proviamo.
So we're almost there. Let's try all together. 1, 2, 3.
Va bene, va bene, va bene.
Okay, that's not bad. It's not bad.
Non mi
We can do
fate
it.
fare figuracce che se no dico, cioè, Negroponte, voglio dire. cioè,
Hey, we have Mr. Negroponte here, a real legend. So our first guest,
che veramente
our host,
avete voluto un'iniziativa.
a person who really wanted to organize this thing. Please help me
A Roberto,
welcome
Colaninno.
Roberto Colaninno. Hi Roberto and welcome. Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. It's a real pleasure, great honor, and I'm very happy to see so many people here. I got 10 minutes to speak, and usually I don't speak for a longer time than the time that has been assigned to me. But today it really would take one whole day to tell you everything we've done, all our feelings, emotions, all the anxiety that we've gone through to be here today. To talk about one thing that, like all big concepts, was really triggered by one simple thing. Henry Ford said, the most difficult things to do are the simplest ones, or the easiest ones, and he was right, because one day we met with 3 friends, not at the bar, not at the cafe, but we began talking about Piaggio, what would happen in the future, how we would move around, what we would do, what our strategy would be like, and we had some big expectations, but also some big concerns. Our expectation was, well, if we do things together, we can do extraordinary things. We can, maybe we shouldn't even mention them, otherwise people would think you're crazy. However, since those are things that will take place in the future, for sure, and it is very hard to think about these things and also to make these things, you're always afraid, you're always concerned that you will never be able to make it, that you can make things that will never be feasible. And people will tell you, what are you looking for? Are you looking for the moon? Are you looking for something that's not there? Are you wasting your time? So I started from I built on my personal experience, and I put all my courage in there. I didn't waste time. I thought about things. I accomplished them. When I was thinking about them, most people said that I was crazy, and maybe I was a little bit crazy, but in actual things, it was really worth it. It was wonderful. And if I were 20 years younger, I would make many more of these things. So I said, let's work together. You are better than I am. You've got an extraordinary mind, an extraordinary brain, wonderful experience. And let's start making a flying bike. Well, some people may think that instead of talking sports, we are talking these things. But this was actually what we were conceiving, what we were trying to conceive. The brainstorming was like that. Let's think unusual things that will be there in our future. And you are the makers of your future. And I really hope that Piaggio will start exchanging experiences with you. That will be the central core of Piaggio Fast Forward, which we established and which we set up in Cambridge, because Cambridge is really the heart of technology, is really in the heart of the future, is really in the heart of people who made experiences that we haven't made so far and that we can make. So that's why we've decided to set it up in Cambridge. We have this new idea, working together, being around the table, being together, thinking, studying, analyzing. And maybe we can conceive ideas that no one has ever had before. Maybe simple ideas, difficult ideas, successful ideas. Let's try and imagine a few things. In 20 years' time, Shanghai, well, there will be 80 million people in Shanghai, and twice as many people
qualche miliardo. Quindi pensate solo ai problemi che in poco tempo voi dovrete affrontare e risolvere.
Just think of the issues that you will have to face and solve. So let's think. We can give you some ideas, we can give you some clues, we can give you some concepts, because then carrying them on is part of the history of our civilization. This company stems from a wish we had, but also because we want to start talking with you, with all young people, and hoping that we are right. We hope that you get this, that you carry it on, that you develop it, and we hope that this will be, for us and for all the people who will work with us, a chance to be happy, a chance to make money, a chance to have fun, and yet another piece of evidence that the future should not scare us. The future is wonderful, the future is big, the future is positive. The future is not simply issues and problems. What we're going to see is something that will make us rich if we want to get it, if we want to develop it, if we want to carry on with ideas that will benefit everyone and not just some individuals. And this is what we want to do. This is what I hope that all the people that will come after me will better describe, to tell you exactly what is the size of this crazy project that we've started today in Milan in front of you. Some friends around the table and incredible friends talking about things that will happen in 10, 20, 30 years and what we can do to face these things that will be here in 10, 20 or 30 years. Just think of the past. Think of what happened 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago and what is the situation now. And we will be visionary enough to think that the ideas that we're working on today will really be there. The future will be different. Things are changing, and you will be the main players in there. So thank you very much for being here. I really, really hope that you will enjoy the meeting, and I hope we can get some big questions, even some criticism that will help us get to our goal. Thank you very much. That's perfect, that's perfect. Please, don't leave, Roberto. Stay here with me. Just 2 minutes ahead. That's a real miracle. Can I ask you one personal thing? How have you managed to convince some of our illustrious guests or some of the people in the board? How did you manage to convince them? Well, if I speak with Mr. Negroponte, well, it's not so easy to convince him. So how have you managed to put together this team of Avengers, as I call them? Well, this is basically what I said before. I've always had some radical ideas. And one radical ideas come together with enthusiasm, well, they make people curious about them, so I managed to raise their curiosity. And speaking with them, I noticed, and they noticed, that they were even more curious than I am. They really wanted to know more than I do. So Roberto Colaninno, thank you very much. We'll meet again at the end for the conclusion of our day. Now then, to introduce our next guest, I would like to show you a video that really summarizes what Roberto has just said.
For 130 years, we've been changing lifestyles, innovating, redefining traveling, and even winning a few things along the way. This has given us a broad view of what mobility means in the world now. Today, we fast forward in time to see what the future looks like. Metropolitan expansion, cities merging, creating huge sprawls and a complexity of transportation that will affect everyone. We see circles, wheels, curves, lines, grids, boxes, stacks, webs, things that walk, run, fly, drive, float and hover. We also see tangles, crosses, knots, swirls, funnels, fences, gaps, hurdles, round holes and square pegs, dots that don't connect and stop people in their tracks. We look at the micro and macro. We see smaller problems and bigger problems. With the power of diverse minds together, where culture meets design and industry, we try to imagine how people will move in the future, to anticipate their needs, expectations and issues. Opening the way for new possibilities, infinite possibilities, shapes and ideas. Ideas that travel further than people. Ideas that will help people travel further.
Okay, very well. So first of all, we're going to have some presentations now, but you can all participate. You can participate in the questions and the requests that you may have. Who has Twitter? Come on, make me happy. What do students use now? Give me a name. What do you use? WhatsApp then? What else? Obviously Facebook. Snapshot maybe? Okay, so on this hashtag you can tweet the Shape Milano. Now you can send in a question, you can send an idea, a request for the presentations you will be listening to, and some of them will be sent to the screen, and at the end of the presentation I will ask the question directly live to the speaker. So it's a very nice way to take part, and you can also tell us what your opinions are. Okay, so we're going to start with the CEO of Piaggio Fast Forward from Harvard professor, a brain which is amazing. We have Jeffrey Schnapp.
Hey Jeffrey, how are you doing? You okay? Right? Welcome. So Jeffrey, you speak a great Italian. Will you do your presentation in English or in Italian?
I was kind of thinking of maybe doing it in German or Chinese.
Jeffrey parla un italiano fenomenale.
Jeffrey speaks an amazing Italian, even better than mine. I mean, so I'll see you later then, Jeffrey. Thank you. Good morning, Milan, then, and I'd like to greet you all. And this is like a dream for me to come true, which is to be on a catwalk here in Milan to show you a new model, which is an extremely chic model, an extremely elegant model, which is this shirt here. It's the premiere for this shirt, and so you can even dream about it, but then maybe a lucky person will be able to take a shirt home when he will leave the meeting. So this is just to introduce my presentation. I would like to start off as an introduction with a very, very concise presentation of the fantastic team that we have built, that we have set up for Piaggio Fast Forward. They are scattered in this room, so I hope I will be able to see them all. I have my friend Greg Lean, Sasha Hoffman, Beth Altringer. Then we have also here our board of advisors, Doug Brent. We have Nicholas Negroponte from Media Lab. We have Jeffrey Nail from Google. So it's an amazing group of people who together will be able, I'm sure, to tackle this issue and to introduce and talk about the possible mobility solutions for this new millennium. As Roberto Colaninno said, this is one of the most urgent and pressing problems and issues that humanity has to face now. And it is facing it in many different ways. You know, there are different realities, such as the ones of the developing countries. Then we have the urban realities where the movement has been stopped and has stopped for decades. And so new types of mobility which are very different, and and Piaggio Fast Forward is really thinking about all of these different challenges and is trying to find the right solution, the right answers to these different challenges. So I would like to briefly talk about the format of this event. It's called The Shape of Things to Come. So when we talk about shape, obviously we're not talking about a true shape, but we're talking about how concepts, ideas, fantasies, imagination become reality of prototypes, of design, of models. So we're talking about very heterogeneous things in this context. We will be talking about biotechnology, mobile architecture, software, hardware. We're going to be talking about new corporate culture, new consumption models. But in all of this variety, there will be a common denominator, which is that a leitmotif, which is that of mobility. Mobility is all over the place, is everywhere in all of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So the things to come. So obviously these are things that can be imagined, that will be invented, that need to be innovated. But there are also things which are rooted in an in-depth reflection about the past. Very often, innovation are the results of, the recovery of certain old projects, for instance. So in my short presentation, I will be only talking about one aspect of this emerging reality, which will condition all of the various aspects of our way of living in the space, which is the fact that data are ubiquitous. And obviously, this is an important fact now for our existence. Now, all of the actions undertaken by humans over the centuries the fact of moving, the fact of reading, of communicating. I mean, all of these traditionally left us some signs that we are all familiar with, such as, for instance, the smoke coming out from a motorbike rather than a draft of air that may come. I mean, they left some signs. But in our era, we have a new thing, which is a very recent thing in the story of humanity. All of these daily reality produce trails of data. These are growing at an amazing speed. So the question that one can ask him or herself when we think about the potential for these data to really modify, to change our habits and behaviors is what can be done with these data. Because obviously raw data alone don't do anything. They don't have a communication capacity. Quite the contrary. So it is when instead we start creating models that we not only collect this material, but we can also build this entire world, which is like a digital craftsman-like world that knows how to express from these data, can give meaning to these data. And it is only then that we can really start to sculpt these data and transform them into elements of our daily experiences. I'm going to show you 3 examples of sectors where I am involved in with my activity. So not so much for Piaggio Fast Forward, but in my scientific activity. It's like an archive. In this case, you are looking at 150 years of trees planted in a botanical garden. This is the archive, which is represented with this type of data visualization, where you can see the entire history with just one interactive animation that tells us the story of 8,000 objects, practically. Let's take another example. This is, for instance, the circulation and the spreading of the printing material. So this was built on the basis of the bibliographical catalogue of 5 of the most important libraries in the world. And it is like a cartography which has a precision that exceeds all of the studies made in centuries of work on the history of printed material. But in 5 minutes, it tells us the entire story. Now, this is the inventory, for instance, of all of the collections of the Harvard museums. This is represented instead like a planetarium. So here you've seen just 3 examples of the enormous expressive power of this material, which is not only institutional material, it's not only collected data. These are the data which belong to our lives, and this allows us to make new experiences, to have new forms of expression. For instance, if one thinks about the fact that throughout the history of human civilization, that we've lived between ants and elephants. We have thought that certain objects were big, such as mountains, for instance. But now we are living instead in a world where we have access to micro and macro scales of data, of information, which thanks to these techniques are increasingly easy to use, and that allow us to live on other scales too, to experience phenomena within which we can be immersed, but that go well beyond our cognitive capabilities. For instance, this is a cartography of what I did on my keyboard. This was, for instance, last week, one morning in last week. There are micro gestures I made I'm not even aware of. Or, for instance, this is a trip with all of the various places where one stopped. So we've got all of these techniques, these emerging techniques that allow me to self-represent myself, to have a self-representation of myself in my world of connections, of relationships, of messages with other people. We've got so many tools now that are beginning to condition my memory, my perception of who I am, or with who I connect, with whom I talk. And this is a world which I think will increasingly come out and will increasingly become crucial. And this works not only on an individual level, on a micro level, but it also is can be applied to the way, for instance, in which collective memories are built, the archives, the historical archives. I'm showing you some screenshots here, for instance, of a collective archive, which has been created by Harvard. This is for the documentation on the earthquakes in Japan. The earthquake of 2011 in Japan. So this has been built on the basis of 9 million objects that go from tweets, obviously, that have some tags, which are geochronological, which are amazingly precise, up to, for instance, video documents, people talking, so all types of different documents. And what is really nice about it, and what is also fun about it, is that this transforms the memory of how you build an event. For instance, here I can work on 1/1000th of a second here. So from a macro vision, I go down to this extremely micro vision, and this is obviously very different. This has changed things also for historians, for the way we see our existence and we see our activity. So in these last minutes, I would like to close, I would like to wind up with the talking about mobility. Obviously, mobility is an absolutely fascinating topic for us, and it is the basic element. It lays the foundation, let's say, of all of the work that we are doing at Piaggio Fast Forward. Moving has always meant living for many human beings, for all human beings, and to move well, to move at the right speed, to move with the right freedom has always meant moving better, to move more freely, to live more freely, to live a better life, to have a better quality of life. So the topic of mobility is nothing new in reality. It's always been crucial in the history of humanity. And I mean, the inventiveness of humanity can be perceived in many different stages in the development of mobility. I'd like to go back to the beginning of the past century, when we find, for instance, this lovely lady, Florence Priscilla, Lady Norman. She was a suffragette who was a scandal for the London society with her lovely autoped. We are in 1916. And she was going around quite freely around London without really respecting what at the times were the correct behavioural standards for a woman. And this is just to say that the problem of mobility is to invent types of mobility that also express our social values, our belief and our perception of who we are and who we want to be. And this has always been crucial in the history of civilization. We can see another example here. We have a French boy who around 1919 was carrying an early folding scooter with him. So we have this problem of something light, something portable. All these are problems and issues that have very, very profound roots. So the new context we are facing, where we have this enormous amount of data on the one hand and these vehicles on the other, and this desire to move, and the continuation of a narrative that dates back to to ancient times even, I would say. So in this story we have the Vespa, which is an iconic and central object, because the Vespa, just like that autoped of Lady Norman, is an object that has completely modified and modified the way in which world cultures have interpreted that freedom of movement, which is absolutely so important for our social lives. Vespa, which is the invention of Mr. Colaninno, is something that D'Ascanio is something that has fallen down from the sky, because obviously they were producing airplanes during the wars, in the midst of the war, during the bombing, with the destroyed landscapes and terrible infrastructures. The Vespa was there and arrived not to be a motorbike, but something more similar to an airplane. In fact, all of the technical elements contained in the Vespa have been borrowed, let's say, from the, aircraft technologies. So the question I ask myself within Piaggio Fast Forward is as what follows. So what is the new vehicle for the new millennium, which is the Vespa, in an era where big data is part of our daily lives, practically. So, for instance, could it be something like this big invention, which is the Guzzi motorbike with a mechanic flight, let's say, an object that can go up the stairs, get into the houses? Who knows? All of these speculations are based on history, obviously. Also, what could this vehicle be that can take us wherever we want to go? Maybe not to our offices, because probably we will be working from our own houses, but maybe we can go around for a walk, or we can deliver something, we can do home deliveries with this object. I mean, these are all the questions that we ask ourselves, especially, in the average scale, so between the drone that we talk even too much about and the car. What's in between that? How big, how portable is it? With what engine will it use? I have shared all of these questions, which are part of the current debate on mobility, with others. And if you want to have an answer to that question mark, well then, stay tuned. Thank you very much. Very well. I have a question for the audience first. How many of you... Very frankly, how many of you have a personalized, a customized cartography of the use of your keyboard? How many of you? How can you do that? I mean, yes, I did one yesterday, maybe, but how do you do a personal cartography? Do you have a scanner? How does it work? No, you just have to use practically some tools. It's the tools that hackers use to invade your personal space. But you can use it for this other purpose. These are the operations which I believe that allow you to see the creativity, the productivity of this world that we inhabit. So we have put together some questions from the audience. There's another thing also. I can't resist. I have to ask it straight away. Are there any journalists here? Can you please close your ears for a moment, switch off cameras? Now, the image of the person on the invisible Vespa. Do you already have it? Can we say something about it? If what's underneath exists, you mean? Well, if it existed, I wouldn't be telling you. I would keep it a secret. Okay, very well. So let's have a look at the questions from the audience. We'll put them together. Can we get the slide? Oh, thank you. A big round of applause for technicians. They've done an enormous and excellent job, and they've been here since 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So fast forward, what direction, what real or imaginary place should we move to, and should we look at to go beyond? So what is the direction, what is the place of fast forward? Well, it doesn't have only one answer, because obviously mobility is mobile, and so it lends itself to many different interpretations, many uses, many needs as well. And so I think that the question maybe should be reformulated. So what are the dreams, we could ask? What are our desires? What are the desires that we want to achieve amongst us dealing with transport and mobility? And we're talking here about imaginary or real places, and this is a very stimulating provocation, because we have this new reality, which is also that connected to our daily lives, where we have this massive presence of data that we produce, that we manage, and so on, that have been studied, and it's a reality where the boundary between imaginary and real is very, very blurred, let's say. So it can be seen also in simulated environments to understand. Yes, I think, for instance, that in the sector of, for instance, in the context of a showroom, when one purchases something, I mean, this boundary will become increasingly blurred between imagination and reality. Next question, if we can have it. So the physical world and the virtual world merge within objects, creating new scenarios. Towards what ecosystems are we moving? Well, it's quite similar to the previous question. It goes hand in hand with the previous question. The world has always been a hybrid world. We live between material, physical, palpable realities, and then we have, on the other hand, ideas, dreams, and so data add themselves to are an additional layer on this invisible things. In the case of a city, in the case of a journey through a landscape, obviously the question as a designer, as an engineer that one should ask him or herself is, what does it add? What is the added value to my experience? Are these information? Is it information that I need, or do I need more of a qualitative thing, or do I need more of an aesthetic thing? And which becomes, let's say, the key to a better experience, a more intense experience. In your presentation, you focused on the importance of seeing, actually visualizing data. I see a lot of companies that are flooded with data, but then the problem is, who looks at these data? How are they interpreted? If you visualize them in an understandable manner, this obviously helps you. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted to underline. This art, which is a new form of rhetoric, is a very craftsman-like for the moment. We're just at the beginning of the construction of new codes to express this complexity, which goes well beyond of our cognitive skills, practically. We can't look at 250,000 works of art at the same time. But data, this type of visualization, open a door and it allows us to be able to narrate this data in a more customized manner. And this is a huge potential even for the sector of mobility. Maybe one last question. I see that you have all of these questions appearing. Should the future scare us or not? We've got very much this topic of fear and the future. To what extent is it a problem? To what extent is it instead an opportunity? Well, I believe that if the present and the past scare us, also the future will scare us if we fear the past and the present. So in any historical and cultural context, you need to find where the passion lies, where the fun lies. So my answer is no. My answer to this question is no. So Jeffrey Schnapp, thank you very much, and I will see you later.
Now then, our next guest. Next guest has a very specific skill. She knows what people desire and why do they desire these things and how. And what is the impact of design on desire. And in technical terms, this is really cool, it's wonderfully cool. Just think about it. If a company knows about it, then they know how to design a product and how to set it up. Very interesting. She's a professor with a lot of experience. I don't know if it's her first time in Italy or not, but Beth Altringer.
I'll leave you the stage and I'll see you later for the Q&A.
Wonderful. I have to say that this is I didn't even really know that this was a dream until today, but to be on the runway with a bunch of big brains is a pretty exciting moment in my life. So I focus on why some products and services are more desirable than others. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I think about this, about the framework that I use, and share some example projects with you. So this is the desirability framework that I use. So I look at multisensory balance. So if you think back to the cup of coffee that you had this morning, you have smells happening, you have tastes happening, you have the feel of the mug, you have temperature, you have the environment around you, you have the conversation. You have this rich multisensory experience, and you have this sense of whether that was a desirable coffee experience or not. People are not ambiguous about that. And I look at where that balance actually is. And then I also look at emotional design. So you have these cognitive and identity associations with coffee. It's associated with wakefulness, first thing in the morning, sort of time of day, etc. Both of those might be really positive. So you've had this nice multisensory experience, a nice emotional experience with your coffee. And then the third one is about expectation and reality fit, right? If your coffee is chunky, you probably didn't expect chunky coffee, and that sort of destroys the desirability of this experience. So why is desirability especially important today? Why is there this urgency about it? And the way that I think about this is because there's an increasingly open conversation between consumers and creators. And I'm going to share an example. I don't know how many people here know of the brand J. Crew. Does anybody know of this brand? So J. Crew is a very popular fashion retailer in the United States. In 2008, an anonymous blogger named Alexis, who's in her 30s and apparently in academia and is not me, for the record, 95% of Alexis's wardrobe is J. Crew. She starts this site. This site basically becomes a crowdsourced, in real life, review site of J. Crew outfits. She has no sponsors, no links, no advertisements on the page. She's not even trying to make money off of this. J. Crew's response to Alexis is basically no official relationship because they can't really control Alexis in any way. This site gets about 25,000 hits a day. And in 2014, J. Crew releases their own review system. But that's not the end of the story. It goes even further. A fan, yeah, there's me, I'm a fan. So a fan actually requests a specific swimsuit to be brought back into production, and that, I want to show the swimsuit. Here we go, yeah. So this swimsuit was out of production. A fan requests that it comes back. This is in 2014. Jenna Lyons, the creative director of J. Crew, not only responds by bringing the swimsuit back, but by turning it into an advertisement. So she says to this person who requested it, "Dear Miss Avens, your wish is my command within reason. XO, Jenna Lyons." That's pretty powerful. So back to this framework of desirability. One of the most, I've studied a lot of things at this stage. Probably the most powerful experience that I had in terms of understanding desirability was studying to become a competitive blind wine taster. And what you learn to do is study the visual characteristics of wine, the olfactory characteristics, and the chemical characteristics on the palate. And what you're doing is filling out a multi-sensory logic puzzle. And what's so interesting is you have to be able to say, what is the wine varietal, the country, region, sub-region, and the year for each of these different wines. And you can do this, and it's extraordinary, and it really kind of blew my mind, because if you can deconstruct the experience of a glass of wine, you can deconstruct other designed experiences. So when we look at multi-sensory design that delights us, this wine tasting experience, I've kind of in my career so far explored in a lot of different ways, taking that further. And one was last summer in Umbria, I stayed at this farm. And what I really wanted to do was figure out how can we recreate the experience of being in a place for people who are not in that place. And so what I tried to do is tell the story of being in this place, on this farm, in 3 different ways. And really it's the intersection of those 3 different stories that is maybe the way that we can begin to communicate the experience of being in a place to someone who's not there. So one, I individually photographed all of these different things, the people, the cars, the tomato plants, everything that's grown, that's eaten there. And then I also attached cameras to the people who live and work there and compiled a video of a day in the life of this place. I also created a website where you can click into any of these and see the story of the component, right? The component that makes up the whole. And through these 3 stories, you can kind of get a sense of being there without necessarily going there. This was an artistic exploration, but a really interesting one. And what's particularly interesting to me about this area is that technology at the same time is increasing and allowing us to do a lot more with data analysis. So from that exploration, I've now been creating software to enhance flavor discovery. So if we can break down the component parts of wines, of foods, of other beverages, we can also begin to imagine more creative ways to put them back together and still create a delightful experience. So this software is not yet available, but what I'm using it for is collaborations with people who are already at the top of their game creatively. And one of those was called Taste Emoji, and this was earlier this summer with one of the top restaurants in Cambridge. And this dinner was really unusual. So it's an 8-course dinner, a pairing dinner, and the only thing that is on the menu each course is a rich emotional context. So a slap in the face was one of the courses. And what I did is I used this software to translate what does a slap in the face mean emotionally from a multisensory standpoint, from an expectation reality standpoint, and how does that translate into wine? How can I create the criteria to select a wine that is as similar as possible to a slap in the face? Then how can I turn that into criteria for the culinary team at Study to push them creatively? So what they put together was mackerel, it's a type of fish, and a garlic ice cream and some other different things. So they were really able to think even further out there than they might have otherwise. And the dessert dish for this, the final pairing, was Studio 54 in its prime. And we served weed and honey, that's marijuana in a form of a space cake, and honey. And it was extraordinary, and people in Boston were into it. All right, so expectation reality design that can help motivate us. So the example I'm going to give for this is a class that I created. So a lot of my students would love to be Mark Zuckerberg. It's a very popular aspiration at Harvard. And so I studied a little bit, how well are we preparing them for this expectation that they might have in the world? What's interesting is their expectation in terms of the classroom is for a pretty traditional class. That's for studying with peers who are studying the same thing, working on problems that have known answers, being evaluated individually, and rarely being given the responsibility for deciding what next they should do in the classroom. But the reality for becoming someone like Mark Zuckerberg is that you need to work on multidisciplinary teams, work on open-ended problems that don't necessarily have an answer, to get this practice deciding what next in an environment of uncertainty and defending those decisions. And we give students remarkably little practice in those areas. So I created a course called Design Survivor, and it's kind of like the reality show Survivor, but a little less mean. And we focus on design. And so in about 12 weeks, students do 10 different projects. Each of those projects has a psychological concept at its foundation, because that's my field. So one of those might be interpersonal status display, for example. Or how do you create something that is calming for people? We have 10 different case studies, and so one of the other weeks is we study behavioral change, and so we bring Fitbit in, and they talk about how they've been really successful in this area. There are 10 different design skills, so one week we're doing 3D modeling, another week we're creating electronic music, another week we're creating furniture, another week we're creating a behavioral change strategy. They have 10 different partners. Each of these is a collaborative challenge. They get 10 rounds of feedback, both on the idea and on the partnership. They develop a collection of what they're finding interesting in the world, as well as what they're creating in the world. And because my background is in advanced analytics for this type of work, they benefit from all of that. So I'm able to analyze what they find interesting and what they're creating and tell them what some of the patterns in those things are that can help them make some career decisions in the future. So we talked about multidisciplinary design, or sorry, multisensory design, and then we talked about expectation, reality, fit. The last one is emotional design. And so I'm going to share with you one of the challenges from the students this last year. So can we create music and headphones that actually make us feel better? If you look at these headphones, they're actually gritty, they're 3D printed, they're functional, and you can create them in a week. So what we did is this particular challenge built on a bunch of the other challenges in the class, so the students needed to identify a context that puts them in a negative mood. They needed to design a behavioral change strategy involving music to improve that mood. So we analyzed Pharrell's Happy. You know this song? It's a very well-known song. And it elicits happiness. It actually makes you feel happy, right? So we studied all of these things that you can see up here to figure out, why does happy actually make you feel happy? And the students needed to learn SolidWorks, which is 3D modeling software, Ableton Live, music software, and design a song based on those analytics. Then they designed headphones based on this concept of interpersonal status display, so they had to be covetable. And then they had to assemble, produce, test, and demo these a week later. So what I want to end on is actually a provocation for all of you. So what is the desirable design conversation that you're having with the world? And when I work with my students to think about this, we focus in two areas. So one is, what are you noticing in the world that you find desirable, and how are you recording this so that you can analyze it later? And what are you creating in the world? What are you producing that's desirable? And back to that example of J. Crew, what feedback channels are you opening up for information to come back to you? And then finally, how are you reflecting on this to improve yourself and to improve the types of things that you're creating in society? Thank you.
I'll switch in Italian for a second. In pratica, secondo me uno dei concetti
Well, in practice, one of the main concepts in Beth's speech is that you can reconstruct the experience. You start from the back, you understand the user's experience, and from that you understand what is the path that is followed to make a product desirable or less. And then she carries out all those wonderful experiences. If I had her as a professor, my life would have been totally different.
My life would have been completely different. I mean, and how do your students react? I mean, when you say, okay, guys, let's design headphones that make you feel happy. I mean, that's crazy.
So I put a lot of work into designing the challenges. I do them all myself first. And one of the criteria for designing them is that it sounds impossible when I announce it.
Okay.
And then a week later, the students have succeeded in doing this. And the reason I do that is it's confidence inspiring, not because I can do it or because I've invited famous guests who can do it, but because you didn't think it was possible last week and you just did it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let's get a few questions.
Sure.
And I'm also curious, while we get the slide on the screen, follow me that, so I want this audience see you, that they are. You still with me, guys? Let me hear your passion.
Woo!
Oh, that was good. Really amazing passion. Okay, so by the way, that experiment in the restaurant with the slapping face, I mean, you really went there and someone slapped you in the face while you're eating, or it was
No.
Okay.
No, it's can we translate that into food and beverage?
Okay.
And I did serve a little Band-Aid on the side of the plate.
Okay.
Just in case.
Cool, very interesting. So, what does it mean to you to explore and train your taste and desire? Why so important creatively and entrepreneurially? Well, okay.
Great. So, I mean, for my own journey, this has been really important. But one of the things I've found really interesting in the types of analytics that I do. So, at this stage, I don't know, I have hundreds of students a year, and I analyze what they're noticing in the world and what they're creating in the world to give them better feedback. And one of the things that I've found most profound about that is that they're related. It's like that it's like we're all having this conversation with the world to figure ourselves out, and that manifests in what we notice, what we find desirable, and what we try to create for the world, especially when we're given the freedom to create what we think would be best. And I think what's so interesting about that is that dialogue is different for all of us, and we want that sort of diversity, but the challenge is then figuring out what conversation you want to have with the world.
Right. What do you think are few examples of products or service that are designed in a way that people just, they want it, that's it. I was thinking, iPhone, of course, people feel like it's sexy to have it, or is any case study that you think, wow, this is really super cool?
There's so many. I could have this conversation all day, but one of my favorite products is Sonos. It's perfectly plug and play. It's with your phone and with your entire sound system in your house, and you can create a system that used to cost so much money, and now it's simple. And it says that it's a 5-minute setup, and it truly is a 5-minute setup.
Yeah. By the way, I'm a Sonos user, but okay.
I love Sonos. Yeah.
All right, next question is in Italian. I'll translate it for you. Sure. Poi mi dite chi ha fatto queste domande, ve lo voglio vedere, fuori lo voglio vedere. Allora, to understand if design will have an impact on desire, will the experiential marketing use often?
Okay, I think I understand what you mean.
Yeah, it was my translation, if you didn't understand.
Yeah, I think I use slightly different terminology, but I think what we're able to do with data is really interesting. So not only do you have like the Alexis example that I gave, where technology is allowing people to just share more through different platforms with us, but also we're able to track behavior in a way that wasn't possible in the past, and that opens up new opportunities for analytics. So absolutely, experiential and like a two-way dialogue is changing the way that we think about design. It's opening up the domain of design to not just the creator as we've seen it in the past, but the shared experience of creation.
How do you choose your research? I mean, one day you get up and say, well, I could do research on this. Why? What are the variables that you choose to start a research on a topic?
Sure. So it helps that I'm interested in pretty much everything.
Okay.
But I also I feel really grateful to have the job that I have. I get a lot of freedom in what I decide to research, and I focus on the things that I find most interesting. And I'm fascinated by this concept of multisensory balance, and you can see it happening kind of over and over again in different areas of what I've done. And I think that's important, and when I talk to my students about, they're all obsessed with this question of what they want to do with their lives. And if you have the luxury to focus on what you find interesting, the reality is that the road's going to be really difficult, and you need that extra motivation to get over all of those hurdles. And I think that, I've been really lucky to have that experience, and I think the degree to which that's possible for those of you who are students in the audience, try to create that. Try to really push yourselves along the dimensions of the questions that are most interesting to you, because you actually kind of can forge your own path that way.
I love it. I will translate it in Italian just to be sure that everyone understands if they're a student. Beth dice un concetto bellissimo, secondo me, che per capire
Beth
cosa vuoi fare da
says
grande,
something wonderful.
cosa vuoi
In
fare
order
nella
to understand
vita,
what you want to do in your life, you need to focus on those questions that are most interesting to you, where your desire, that trigger your desire, because this is the only way to know you're heading the right way.
We have to find between desires and needs for future products in the mobility field. Okay.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. There are kind of two parts of this question I think that are really interesting. One is that we're differentiating between desires and needs. And I think that sometimes the term desirability is seen as a sort of luxury, an add-on that we might have. But I think that our needs are part of what is desirable, right? We have to meet that first. But it's hard to be competitive and only focus on needs these days, because that tends to be a commodified space. And so the extra levels of desirability become even more important right now. So specific to mobility, I think this is it's such an exciting time to be working in mobility because some of the fundamental premises of the way people move are changing and changing in different ways in a lot of different countries. And so in terms of like finding this balance, there's definitely a research initiative for figuring out like what is changing and how is this changing the way people move in a really fundamental way, like, and removing ourselves from the assumptions that transportation needs to be car-based or, you know, any of the other assumptions that we've been making. And I think it's a really exciting time to reimagine what mobility can mean in the future.
Right. I read this book, I think it's called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Possible? I love that book.
Yeah.
Did
you
Kahneman.
Write it? Or
I did not, no, that's Daniel Kahneman. He's a hero. Yep.
It's a good book. And there is one moment when he's talking about priming. So basically he say, okay, if you go in a restaurant and the song is, I don't know, a French song, you maybe are a little bit pushed to order a French wine or something like that. Is this priming really so strong to start the desire in your research?
That's a fascinating question. So there's a sense that priming is a real thing, but this is what's so exciting to me about where we are right now. So that's one factor, but it happens in context, right? You have many other factors at work, and we're developing the analytical capacity to look at priming in the context of all of the other factors. So priming may not be the most important factor. You might be at that restaurant, you hear the French music, you have your list of wines, but you know, your partner prefers a different wine. Well, that's probably going to influence your decision more than the fact that the music was on. Okay. So we're able to like look at all of those factors and tabulate them within context and also account for the subjectivity of these types of problems.
Got it. So the context is the most important thing.
It's essential, yeah.
Very good. Beth Altringer, a big round of applause, guys. Thank you so much, Beth. I'll let you go down there. Ok. Molto bene. Tema interessante questo, desiderio prodotto. Se tu riesci a sapere cosa vogliono gli utenti e perché, chiaramente poi fai dei prodotti e servizi in corrispondenza. Siete ancora con me? Mi date un po' di energia qua, quest'ala abbandonata. Vi chiedo scusa perché poi siamo sempre di là. Io vorrei vedere, starò qua adesso, tutto il tempo resto qua, fermo immobile con voi. Allora, prossimo ospite, parliamo di un'imprenditrice serial entrepreneur. Quindi ha fatto diverse aziende di successo, exit, startup, molto brava. Una dinamo, chi è che mi diceva dynamo? Una macchina da guerra, lo tradurrei in italiano. Veramente un piacere averla qui con noi. Possiamo parlare molto anche di business legato a tutto questo tema del design della mobilità. Qui con noi Sascha Hoffman. Sascha, I'll see you later for the question.
Thanks. Yeah. Welcome. So I've always loved startups.
Mi sono sempre piaciute le start-up. Ho iniziato a 18 anni con la prima start-up, che era una start-up, avevo 18 anni ed appunto di borse. E da allora ho sempre fatto parte di piccole aziende, grandi aziende. Sono stata
called Fuzzy Compass, and it is an on-demand travel tech company. But what I love so much about startups is really how fast-paced that they are and how when I meet entrepreneurs, I feel like I'm seeing the future. So I'm in a room with a lot of students, so I must ask the question, how many of you would like to either join a startup or start a company at some point? Okay, good. I see the future in this room. So today we're going to talk about a couple of things. One, the on-demand economy. How many of you use your smartphone to order something? Exactly. And we're going to talk a little bit about how design and purchasing should impact those of you who want to start companies. How should that impact, based on who your buyers are, what that should look like, some case studies, and then lastly, some insights around starting a company from someone who's both started one and worked for some other companies. Please learn from my mistakes. So starting first with the explosion of on-demand. So the on-demand economy really refers to being able to get something immediately. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. If you've ever ordered a car, you've ordered food, you've pretty much used your smartphone to get this. So this is Adriana, and she's an example of someone in the US who, to be honest, this actually looks a lot like my typical day. You get up in the morning, you check your fridge, and I take out my phone. The average person uses their phone or taps it 42 times a day now. And the first thing I do is I look in my fridge and I see if I need groceries. And I go and I order my groceries through Instacart, which is a US-based service that delivers groceries. Then I go and I need a car and I head to work. Then I realize, oh, I have a conference. I'm going to go and I'm going to actually book my hotel room as I'm waiting in the Uber. And then I'm going to order lunch, and that's going to get delivered. Then I need to order a memory card. I do that through Prime. And many of these are US-based companies, but I order alcohol. It can be delivered within an hour on Drizzly. I can do same-day maid service. I can get a TaskRabbit to come and do plumbing. I mean, as you go through, if I'm in Milan, I can get an Enjoy. I saw that yesterday. I've never ridden a scooter, actually, but I'm planning to. And I can get a package delivered at night. So what you're seeing here is that from my phone, over the span of a day, I'm taking care of everything. And what used to be a luxury, this idea of concierge and having someone deliver something to you instantaneously, is no longer a sort of rich people service. It's available to the everyday consumer, and all of you are already doing that, and it's only getting bigger. In the last year alone, over $4 billion has been spent in venture capital money to fund the on-demand space. And it's still growing. I think that there's a lot of areas for growth, especially as it relates to the B2B marketplace. That means business to business. That hasn't seen as much growth. And then these are some things that are already happening, but it's only really to grow bigger. And what you're seeing here is that people want to be able to get things instantaneously. So for those of you sort of wanting to build companies, planning to join companies, the easier you can make it for someone to get something in that instant and not even need to think about it, the better that you do. What impact does this have on mobility and on workforce? And it's huge. If you're really talking about an entirely new landscape of everything being delivered in that instant, then you're talking about basically what used to be, let's take the hotel as an example. I get into a hotel, I check into my room. There's a concierge, there's room service. I do everything from within the hotel. Now, I sit on my bed and I can order everything from my phone. I can get any type of food that I want, and everything comes delivered. And what this means is that you also need new forms of mobility, because how that stuff is being delivered and so quickly needs to change. And a new workforce is emerging that's somewhat more flexible and can kind of balance this whole, oh, I need food right now. Okay, well, it actually has to be delivered in 20 minutes. And the fastest way to do that in a city is maybe on a bike or on a scooter. So what does the world look like in a couple years in the on-demand space? And to be honest, it's probably going to look a lot more like autonomous vehicles, smaller 2- and 3-wheel vehicles, drones, any of the above. But what it won't look like is tons and tons of cars. Millennials, they are my favorite demographic. They are the demographic that I'm in and what I think to be about half this room is in. And so millennials are interesting for a lot of reasons. They are a force of nature. Companies are fiercely competing to get the mind share of millennials. They check their devices all the time. They use more than 4 devices per day. They are trendsetters in everything from fashion to food. They have a huge influence on older generations as well. And what's so kind of interesting about them is they're highly educated, they're career-oriented, and they can actually have huge brand engagement when given quality and sort of being part of that experience. So it's really important to kind of figure out how to market to this demographic, mostly because they don't use traditional advertising. I mean, how many people in this room actually see an ad and believe it? I never have, right? So, and that's kind of the future. You trust your friends. So this is what happens. Every time that I want to go buy something, I go ask my friends, I look on social media, but what I don't do is look at an ad that told me something is cool. And what's more relevant is that after I've decided I like something, and when I've experienced it, I automatically go and I share it on social media. And that's really important because it's that sort of instant experience and that ability that even yesterday I saw something I really liked in a store, and my immediate thought was Instagram it. And I felt this need to share it with the world because I loved it. And being, even to Beth's talk as well, you're part of that experience, something made an impact on you, now you go and you share it. So we are digital natives. We grew up with smartphones. This is the only world that we know. So we have a tendency to compare prices all the time. If we're in a store, if we're online, we're anywhere. And this is really important because for a millennial, price is that much more important sometimes than quality to non-millennials. We check that first. Quality is still important, but we check price first. Next up is kind of frictionless purchasing. So what does this mean? Has anyone ever ordered a car? An Uber, an Enjoy, anything? Okay, good. So when you're on your phone and you go to order something, the nice part is if you get into an Uber or any one of those car services, after you order it, it's one click to order. You get in, you get out of the car, and you don't need to think about anything. That experience is incredible. I get in somewhere, I'm thinking, I'm doing my work, I get to my destination, I don't need to pay the cab. I don't need to do anything, I just get out. That's kind of that sort of idea of frictionless purchasing. So this idea to be able to buy in the instant when you want something. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Amazon, their dash button, people are getting better and better at this. And that's that at the point at which you have somebody's interest and you've captivated them, keep them. Let them buy in that moment. If you can find a way to integrate into your products an ability to buy immediately, conversion is that much higher because you actually have them in that moment when they're most interested. So design elements changing consumer behavior. And how I really mean this is we're all using a different form factor. The smartphone, you know, it's various sizes with the iPhone 6 and Motorola's and everything else. But the point is, this is the device that we're primarily on. And you need to find a way so that you can integrate design in a way that suits sort of your product best. And here are some examples of things that have done extremely well in the market. Instagram sort of removes choice. If you've ever used Instagram, you know that in order to upload a photo, it has to be a square. They don't let you sit there for 20 minutes and play around with your photo and crop it. You get a bunch of filtering options, which I know does take the 20 minutes, but it's one square. And their ability to do that actually really, really helped adoption. The next thing is the minimalist interface. So let's talk about removing choice. When you get to a website that's super crowded, what do? Your eyes are everywhere. You don't know where to focus. And one of the best, sort of the highest click-through rates and sign-up rates on websites that do well are ones that basically have no choice at all. You get to the website and it gives you one option. You either click a button, you put in your email, or it tells you to do something. It's considered a call to action. Don't have 10 of them. Just have one of them. And it's extremely impactful if you can, because the more you minimize and remove choice and you just tell someone what to do, it turns out that the consumer actually does it. So single-click payment, this is what we were talking about with Uber. There is no reason anymore to make anyone go through a multi-step process. I certainly don't like to go to a checkout where I have to, sit there and write in my name and my email address and my credit card information every time. Find a way to make everything one-click payment. You put it in once, it memorizes it, and you never need to think about it again. On top of that, when used in places like restaurants or otherwise, it actually ends up creating tips that are larger because people come there and they don't even think about it. It's all automatic. Intuitive gestures, Tinder, various dating sites, this sort of idea now of being able to animate and use gestures as opposed to just saying yes or no. So find ways within your product to actually bring in an animation component. And then lastly, single sign-on. It's important, I don't know about everybody else, but I pretty much use my Facebook login for absolutely everything. There was once this time where I had a file that had 280 email password combinations for different sites that I was part of. And it got to the point where I was just like, this is horrible, and where am I going to carry this around? We've entered a world where you want one single sign-on, if you can, because nobody wants even the headache of adding an email and password. Our society has become completely impatient. I mean, the idea of something taking longer than 2 seconds to even load is a nuisance. So if you can find a way to make that sign-on process one step simpler, that makes your adoption of your product that much better. I'm going to let that go. So for kind of lastly, I want to talk a little bit about insights of starting a company. So sort of 4 things to think about. 1, learn from other people's mistakes. I worked for several companies prior to starting my own, and not all of them succeeded, although they are still in business. So I guess that's fine. But what I learned was so great, because I learned somebody else's mistakes on their dime. And I think that that's so important. If you've got a great idea and you want to start it tomorrow and you've never worked for a company, go for it. But if you have an opportunity to actually go and work for somebody, it's really great. And if it's the worst experience you've ever had, I promise it's still a learning lesson that's helpful later. In fact, the more bad sort of experiences I've had, the better they shaped how I could be a manager and run a company, because I was like, wow, I never want to do any of this. So it works out pretty well. The next thing is around that not everyone is going to be Mark Zuckerberg. I am never going to be Mark Zuckerberg. That's okay. And I think that it's important to know that you can still build something great, but you should start a company not because you want to be Mark Zuckerberg, but because you're very passionate about something and there's a real problem to solve. Most startups take a while. They don't just exit overnight. A lot of the companies I was part of, it was several years. It's going to take time. If you're not excited to do something for 5, 10 plus years, there's a lot of grind before there is an exit. And so you want to be part of something that you're really, really excited about. Next, build things that people actually want. You don't want to need to sell your product. You want your product to sell itself. You want something that gets so viral because people are so excited about using it. It's so simple. It's user-friendly. People want it. That's the best type of product that you could ask for. So when you actually go to build something, show it to people. If they don't get it, don't take it personally. Just change it. That product iteration process, I sort of do this thing where when we start our company, we do everything in sort of small frames. So we have an idea for, let's just say, a new type of travel concept. We'll very, very quickly get something out the door, and we'll get feedback on it. And that's the best possible way that you can start. And even if everyone absolutely hates what you're doing, that's actually really great for you to know. Why should you go down the path of something that nobody actually is going to buy? And then from there, I would say kind of my last learning is when you're ready to start a company, go. And just try it. I think that you can't sit around dreaming all day. I definitely procrastinated prior to starting a company, and I think it's important to actually just try it. And today, especially because of a lot of the software and tech that's out there, you can get something out the door really, really cheaply and in not much time, and you can test it. And you don't need to have huge results or build a huge company to really get started. You just need to see if somebody wants what you're creating, if it solves a real problem and has a product market fit. And once you do that, you can grow from there. The other thing I would say is there's so many resources now, especially overseas as well. Take advantage of them. On a regular basis, I'm part of some various incubators and accelerators. We love having international candidates. And I know Milan is way more fashionable than Boston. But that being said, there's a lot of great places where you can harness the knowledge. And startup communities in the UK, in Israel, in the United States, there's so many places you can go. And there's tons and tons of free money and mentor networks. And I would highly suggest, if you're going to start something, to look into one of those places. Even if you go there for just getting a ton of knowledge, 4 months later, come back and build your company in Italy. But thank you.
All right. I saw one tweet and was written, Sasha Hoffman, it was in Italian, pure energy. I thought, wow, that's cool, that's really cool. And I switch in Italian 1 second because I want to do a quick recap of a couple of points that you made, and I think it's very important for especially students probably. Due punti che mi hanno colpito della presentazione di Sasha. Il primo è questo trend della sharing economy.
Of the sharing economy, the 2 points. One is sharing economy. This passage, this shift from property to instead just using the product. And I have seen an initial slide with all of the brands and Uber and so on. The good news is that these services will be arriving later. The bad news is that 80% are not in Italy yet. The second aspect is this. It has to be immediate. So the sooner you get the product, the better it works. And this is another important aspect. And then other aspects on startups, entrepreneurship, to do as much experience within a company as possible before you launch a startup.
with a few questions from the audience, and we see what's going on. Follow me. I'll take you there. I like it, you know. I'm sorry that I'm married, but okay, we arrived there. Okay, give us the question. Thank you, guys. If I were to be selected for a job interview by PFF, naughty guys, okay.
I love it. I'm recruiting. I'm always recruiting.
Immediately someone coming with the CV down. Okay, which is the first thing you ask me? I'm not great in English, but I don't think you say you would, you ask.
No, that's fine.
It's good, okay.
It's great. So
what are the secret questions?
I'll give you a couple. So I guess the first couple things that I like to ask.
Wait, can I write it down? Okay.
I can translate to Italian too, it's easier. So I love to give people case studies because I really like to see how they think. Okay. So I mean, this isn't necessarily the first thing, but one of the first things is that I just give them a problem and I just want them to walk me through how they solve it. Because more than anything, hiring great talent means finding people who can solve problems and seeing how they think.
Okay. So you don't, but do you read, that's an interesting question, I think. Do you read the CV? Because when I read the CV of someone that I have to hire,
cover letter or
they
resume?
are always like, it's like that they are the salesperson.
For themselves. Right. So I usually let people walk me through their resume at the beginning. I tend to not like resumes. I never ask for them. I look at people's LinkedIn. I think that more and more, I want to see your online presence. If you're applying to a company that is a real brand, I want to know that you also are a brand and that you've crafted it in such a way that if I Google your name, I can find you. And whether that's LinkedIn or that's Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, however you like to be on the web, I want to know about it. And I want to know what you're talking about and how you think. I want to know if you're social and engaging because we live in a world that's global and very engaging. And if you don't know how to engage with your audience or just other people in general, probably not going to be much help to us.
Okay. Quindi importanza di costruire una propria presenza online, that's good. Yeah.
So yes, the importance of having a strong online presence.
All right, I want to come with me down. Come with me down that I take you to the other part. Otherwise, no one. Okay, starting from your experience, education.
Learning on the job.
Or learning on the job, yeah.
Yeah, so I studied economics and political science, and I've never used it a day in my life. I did take an accounting class, which I highly recommend.
I love it. Okay.
But learn it on the job. I think my biggest recommendation to anybody who's still in college and not, what month are we in? Oh, you're not graduating soon. Is to take as many internships as you possibly can. I think the world is changing so fast right now that, frankly, most schools aren't keeping up. And the classes that you're going to take, the textbook is already outdated by the time that you're reading it. And the best knowledge that you can get is on the job. People love students. Free interns is like my favorite thing on the planet. And so if you go... I mean, the best way that you can cold call anyone. I have stalked people outside of office buildings to get meetings. I send them LinkedIn messages. I'll send them like free coffees and they need to figure out who it's from. I mean, find a way to get in front of the people that you want to get in front of and get a job that you like and try. I mean, over the course of college, I think I had 8 internships. Greatest thing I ever did because by the time that I graduated, I actually knew what I wanted to do. And so I would highly recommend going and doing that. And then once you're actually on the job, a lot is self-taught. I think that you should take it upon yourself once you're there to sort of be a trendsetter. That's actually what I love so much about millennials and about the social media is that you often see that all of this was just created by young people. And they figured it out themselves, and they looked at it, and they said, this is a problem. How do we fix it? And they just did it themselves. So I also think, yes, you'll learn on the job, but you should also create the stuff that other people then want to learn from you about.
Cool. Let's check the next question. What are the mistakes that entrepreneurs often make in their startups? Any advice?
Oh, I have so much.
Sorry, let me ask
you can talk about this all day.
Any startupper in the hall?
It's a couple.
Someone. All right. Want to decide?
It'll be more of you at some point.
Okay. What sector? What sector are you in?
Tourism.
Okay.
Awesome.
It's a competitor.
Travel.
It's a
yes.
competitor.
No competitors.
Okay.
So a couple of things. The thing that actually brings down the most startups is the team. And it is the biggest driver of both your success and likely your growth. And so the biggest mistake that people often make is who they partner with. And I refer to startups, especially the founders, as a marriage. You are stuck with them. So they better be good and they better be a real partner. So the first thing I would recommend is just hire well. Hire the people that are good for you, and hire slowly and fire quickly. And there's some people who will disagree with that. That's okay. But in a startup, it's do or die every single day. You are resource constrained and you need to innovate, and the people are your biggest asset. So hire the best possible people that you can find. I also think a talent bed that a lot of people don't tap into is frankly corporate. A lot of the bigger corporate companies have this incredible talent, and not everyone always sources from there. They source from other startups. Look there, because there's a lot of unhappy people there, and you can bring them over to startup life. Again, I'm recruiting. So I think one other thing, when you first get into the startup, there's good and bad days, as I'm sure everybody has. But sometimes you get discouraged when you see customer feedback that isn't great, or you're just like, why isn't this working? And you're banging your head against a table. I do this every other day. So you just got to figure out what the problem is. Talk to as many customers as you possibly can. There's sometimes fear in the beginning of talking to them. They don't like it. You're like, oh, I'll teach them how to use this. The fact of the matter is, if you need to teach anybody anything, you're not in business. So use this opportunity to talk to as many people as you can, get as much feedback in advance of really blowing a product out the door. And then once you have really good we call it product market fit, then you can really scale something.
I really wouldn't like to meet you when you're angry or to argue with you. I mean, I don't think that would be a good day when you're angry. I'm sure about that, so all right, good. And yeah, fire fast. I mean, that's a good tip. In Italy, I think it's difficult, with unions, it's really hard.
It is. I mean, the reason why they say that in startups is because if you have a 10-person team, and let's say your CTO doesn't work out, that's a really critical role. And I think that this stays like this up until you're even 150 people. Every person matters so much. Look, if they're dead weight, it doesn't mean they're not necessarily good at their job. It might also just be a fit problem. If I'm surrounded by the same 10 people all day long and one person isn't a good cultural fit, they're not really good for the company in the long run, and everybody should put the company first, not just the founder, all of its employees as well.
Right. I also like the idea of doing a lot of experience, also because it's good for networking. I mean, you meet a lot of people, so you learn and you create contacts. I think it's good.
I think people love hearing from students. I mean, I probably get, 50 to 100 emails a week, but I would honestly recommend reaching out to people that just look interesting from their resume and just offering to buy them a cup of coffee and learning about what they do. Because there's so many jobs that it's really hard to just Google. It would be really difficult to Google my role. Like, I'm not even sure that I could define it. So it's go out there and just talk to people who kind of look like they're interesting and hear their story, because every interesting person also knows other interesting people. And my favorite thing to do at the end of a meeting is ask somebody who I should go meet. Who do they recommend that they like or that they are inspired by? And I go meet that person. And that's how you really start to build a network.
Any book that would you recommend? I mean, Lean Startup about iteration.
Founder's Dilemma is a great book for people starting companies. It talks through a lot of the issues, especially Founder's Dilemma. Founder's Dilemma, especially related to the team, which again I think is the reason you will catapult a company up or down.
Cool. Sasha Hoffman. Thank you, Sasha. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Wow. That's good. Okay. Prossimo ospite.
Our next guest, a Bible of architecture. I met a few people before who have come here because they're architects, just to hear our next guest. And a huge round of applause, Greg Ling.
Hey Greg, how you doing? You okay?
Thanks, Marco.
Greg, I'll let you do your presentation, but first of all, I want to understand why, I also ask to Roberto later, why an architect into this Piaggio Fast Forward? I mean, what an architect has to do with mobility is, I don't know, I don't understand. Sorry.
Well, I think you got to think about...
You're also big, so I didn't know if asking or not.
No, you have to think about cities to think about mobility. And what's really getting interesting is how things are bleeding from the city into buildings, big buildings, malls, airports, and small, lightweight devices like Piaggio makes are really blurring all those boundaries between the city, architecture, interiors. I think that's really becoming more continuous.
Important. All right, cool. Greg, I'll see you later.
Okay. Well, I'll start up here just so I can go downhill for the next few minutes. But it's very tough to follow Sasha. I didn't know that. There were some people I didn't want to go after. Now I know don't go after Sasha. But my job with PFF is Chief Creative Officer. And so what I thought I would talk about a little bit are some hints about where design is going and where the shape of things to come is going to be thinking about materials, construction, manufacturing, and also objects that you don't expect to be smart becoming a little bit more intelligent. Now, unlike Sasha, I'm not a millennial. So I had to be introduced to a computer. And I've always found myself for the last 20 years right at the intersection of digital technology and the physical world. And for me, I've spent a lot of time thinking about how digital tools would change the way we build our buildings. And more recently, I've been getting a lot of questions from people. Why isn't my building similar to my telephone? Or why is something stupid like a building not smarter the way technology is? And so I'll talk a little bit about this intersection of the digital and the physical, both in how we make things, but also how we expect different things from the physical world. And I think people's expectations for buildings and spaces has really changed. So the first thing that I want to say is that when architects first got a hold of computers, and I feel that I'm authorized to say also industrial designers, probably even motorcycle designers, the first thing they did was make things complicated. So when we got the digital tools, we made more parts. Every part was different. Everything became complicated. And now, after 20 years of that, I've realized that's maybe not the point. Maybe the point of digital technology is to make fewer parts. And this idea of surface minimalism is something I've been thinking a lot about. So here's a couple projects which are separated by 10 years. This Korean Presbyterian Church was one of the first buildings done with a digital set of construction documents for the structure. Every single piece of steel is a unique length. Every detail is a unique angle. Every single piece of the building is different. And the language of it was really a language of more parts and more complexity of parts. 10 years later, here are some other examples of things that are recent where instead of having more pieces and parts, we're trying to integrate everything into one surface. So the fireplace, the kitchen, even the handles to pull the drawers are all integrated into one surface. So here in the bathroom, you can see there's not even a sink. There's not even a handle for the drawer. It's all done with one surface. So I think this move in digital technology to make things complicated is a little bit over, at least for me. I'm tired of seeing digital things that look like a coral reef or some incredibly complicated construction. I'm more interested in digital technology, which reduces the number of points of contact and reduces the number of assemblies and stages for construction. And this is one of the things we're thinking about with PFF. How do you make an object with less pieces better? How do you put more function into fewer parts and pieces? And how do you do that using digital tools? The second thing is today, space is becoming a premium. But what you see in response to that in both architecture and transportation is oversized products. So you'll look, the first thing I attack as an architect is the program brief, where every function has its own space. Like, that's the absolute worst way to think about design. And I try to attack redundancy and attack specialization like that. I was asked recently to design a house that was only 60 square meters in floor. And the idea that I had was, well, let's take 60 square meters of floor, but put 180 square meters of surface in it by rolling the house so that you could live on 3 surfaces of the house. So to build the model, the first thing we had to do was get a robot that would let us study how you would roll a house around. So what you saw in that big room was a universal industrial robot. The next thing we had to do was then build our own custom robot to move a bigger model of that house. And then finally, we built the interface to control all that. So for me, the way to integrate technology is often to try to get something that wants to be very big, figure out how to get it smaller and smaller and more robust. And again, with PFF, if you come to our space in Cambridge, you'll see we have this kind of universal robot technology, which is, you know, fairly elaborate, but then we try to get it simpler and simpler so we can have the machines to make things move be as interactive and elegant as possible. The other thing about getting things compact, it involves motion, and I'm very interested in integrating motion into the built environment. The second example I'm showing here is a series of pavilions for the world's largest design prize. It's the Index Award in Copenhagen. And they gave me the budget for the building, and the budget was, let's say, just X. And I looked, and the shipping costs in 1 year were 3 times the cost of building the buildings because they were sending 13 shipping containers around the world every month. And I said to them, well, if I can make it smaller, can I have some of that logistical budget? So I managed to triple the construction cost, but overall we saved the cost by half because we reduced all that logistical cost. So when you see that time lapse, that's the time lapse of 2 people assembling 8 pavilions in 2 days. And all 9 of the pavilions fit in 1 shipping container. So also, we started off thinking about building these in wood because everybody said wood was good for the environment. What we ended up building them in was carbon fiber because it was so lightweight and so compact that carbon was the best material for sustainability. In terms of buildings in motion, for me, this is really about what people expect from the built environment now and how they expect things to be dynamic. I very recently met with a company called Curbside, who also is at the intersection of digital and physical retailing. And they said they needed a prototype for 4,000 buildings across the United States where people could order things online and come pick them up at a shopping mall or at a big box retailer. And they had seen the rolling house, and that's why they came to me. And they said they'd like the building to be dynamic. So what we ended up designing is this structure, which is built in only 4 pieces, and it has a robotic, like periscope on the top that follows a cell phone signal in your car as you drive up to pick up your merchandise. So the whole task was to bring to the physical environment this sense of interactivity and also a sense that the building knows you when you come up to the building, and it actually expresses that physically in the interaction. In terms of construction, for me, there's been a huge change. In architecture, we really have been in the business of making drawings. We would produce a set of elaborate documents, deliver those documents to a third party, being a contractor, or even worse, a construction manager, and they would then be responsible for the construction. It involves a lot of steps it separates us very far from both from our clients and from manufacturing. With industrial objects, I've been looking at how to use rapid prototyping as a manufacturing tool and 3D printing as a manufacturing tool. So some of those images you saw were some 3D printed metal flatware that we did for Alessi, where we didn't have to make tools, we didn't have to manufacture in Korea, and also instead of starting off with 5 pieces of silverware, we could do all 52 at once because we were 3D printing it. This example, I decided that I wanted to have the fastest 40-foot boat in the world, and I'd never built a boat or designed a boat. But I went out and with a naval architect, designed and built, using a lot of 3D printing and manufacturing, pretty much the fastest 40-foot boat in the world. The way we did that is we, instead of having to make a lot of tools, we produced a lot of these things toollessly. Those images you saw there, all of those orange parts are all 3D printed nylon working components. You see us sailing at about 45 kilometers an hour. Those are under a huge structural load, but they're actually working parts that come right from a 3D machine. They didn't have to come from a tool and from a manufacturing technique. So the fact that somebody who's an amateur can start a company, make that, and those are all our competitors back there, actually achieve a thing which is high performance like that, is really driven by this change in manufacturing and technology. You don't have to be a big company to be producing these things. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about materials and ergonomics and how things are when you touch them and sit in them. For me, materials are really changing now, where in one object, you can continuously have that object go from hard to soft. And I've got a few examples of that. This chair I did for Vitra, I tried to reduce all the parts. I met with Rolf Fellbaum, who's a brilliant mentor, I would say, for designers. And I showed him a couple options of a chair. One was a chair which was digitally designed, as this was, and it was built out of maybe 200 or 300 pieces. And I said, it's innovative, it's digital, look at how complicated it is. He said, that's not innovation, making things complicated. Innovation is making it simple. So instead, we made a chair where instead of all of the legs and the back and the arms and the seat, we made it in 2 pieces, one soft piece, one hard piece. So 5 years later, we went back to Rolf and said, let's make a chair in 1 piece. So this is the world's lightest piece of seating, weighs about 6 ounces. It's made with carbon fiber tapes, and that chair can smash down and go in an envelope, so I could send it to you by FedEx, and it'll hold 2,000 pounds. So the idea that you can take something which used to be this heavy object, made out of a lot of parts and pieces, and make something out of one material that has hard elements and soft elements with structure only where you need it, and have that be light, strong, portable, and functional is really where I see the future of materials going, where instead of having, like say in a building, structure, exterior cladding, interior surfaces, building systems, you want to collapse that all into one sandwich or one shell, take advantage of all the properties of everything, and eliminate redundancy. And for me, the digital, when it first started, generated a lot of redundancy. And what's happened now with the digital, it's letting us get rid of all that extra mass, extra fat, and extra systems and make things much more refined, elegant, and consolidated. Thanks.
Oh, that was cool. I got it. Cool. I got
Look,
this one.
3 seconds.
You still have 3 seconds. We can.
That's not bad.
No, you were phenomenal. Come on, guys. Let's give it a big applause. It was really cool. I was blown my mind. Really, that was cool.
It's ridiculous, but
really.
thank you.
I'll do 30 seconds recap of the most important things because...
Yeah, I talk fast, sorry.
Yeah, that was cool. Trend che mi sembra di capire, design minimalista, compatto,
minimalist
less
design,
is more, meno è
compact,
meglio,
less is more.
immobilità. I want the house,
Mobility.
the moving house.
Sure.
Okay. But is it possible to buy or not, or is it just a prototype?
No, it's a prototype.
Ok, prototype. Design e mobilità, uso delle stampanti 3D
use
per
of 3D
stampare
printers
una serie di oggetti
to
incredibili
print a
e
series
poi
of
quest'ultimo
incredible
trend,
objects,
from
and
hard to
then
soft.
from
Dal
hard
duro
to
al
soft.
molle, in italiano suona un po' male, però
In Italian
meglio,
is
meglio
not so
molle che duro.
nice.
So
But soft is better
I don't
than
know,
hard.
I just did a big gap, sorry.
I don't know.
From hard to soft
Yeah, no, I
design
get
is
it.
a good trend. Okay, I don't know how to say. Good, great. Well, it was really fascinating. And do you have a 3D printing technology at Piaggio Fast Forward?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, we have a carbon 3D printer, and it was one of the first things we bought, actually.
Okay.
I would say before we even bought an office chair, we bought a carbon 3D printer from Mark Forged. So, in case you want to know where our priorities are.
One question about this, and then we catch the question from the audience. I don't know if everyone in this hall know exactly what kind of materials can 3D printing print.
Sure.
Because I think a lot of people think, okay, you can print, I don't know, plastic maybe, or,
Yep.
you know, what kind of materials you could print today?
We just printed some 3D titanium, like as big as you, like 3 structural pieces of titanium, so you can print metals. What's really, for me, the most exciting is with a 3D printer or laminating carbon like you see on the race bike, you only put the material where you need it. You only put the structure where you need it. So in this building, and it's nothing about this building, it's in every building, every piece of steel takes its worst case and just puts the material everywhere.
Okay.
It's terribly inefficient. Makes things very expensive and
let's
heavy.
talk about another Is the owner of the mall around? Okay, let's do it better, guys.
But 3D printing, it makes things strong, light, and cheap.
Sure.
And for me, that's what's most exciting about it.
And also, it kind of democratizes the access. You don't need to be a huge farm.
It can be.
To create
Definitely can be. And it can bring back a level of customization for all those places you touch and that are specific to your body. It means you can make those bespoke.
Okay, got it. All right, let's take the questions from the audience. I'll start to take you down there.
Yeah, let's walk.
How does the inclusion of new types of it? You are really big. How tall you are?
2 meters.
You say small is the new big, but okay.
So it's out of my control.
Oh, okay. How does the inclusion of new types of innovation, such as 3D printing, for example, could change the way people move? I like it.
Well, what's most interesting, I think, is if you have a big factory somewhere, and people are having to buy the products from that factory, and you have to make tools, you have a different relationship with your customers, you have a different relation with your product than if you take some of that manufacturing and say put it in your dealership or put it at the repair location. So I think really it'll change the objects, but more importantly, it'll change the way we interact with objects, and it'll change the way we produce them and buy them. And it's really an important shift that's happening where you've got to think about a new kind of a factory, new kind of a dealership, and a new relationship with your customers. And those are the kinds of things PFF is thinking about. Not just the product, but actually the whole chain of...
The whole chain. I read a book recently, I think from Jim Davis, and he was talking about what do you need to do to create a product that is accepted by people. And he was saying something like that there is a theory called the minimal counterintuitive theory, or something like that, where basically if you change too much, if you're too creative, if you put too many new things, people, they have problem to accept it, you know. But if you tweak it a tiny bit, then they go for big change. Do you think in architecture is the same thing, or you could, you know, be ambitious and say, I do it in a totally different way now, period?
Well, my specialty is people with new problems.
Okay.
So, first job I ever got was for a Korean Presbyterian church. And they said, we're Koreans and we're Presbyterians.
So we have two problems.
Yeah, here's a list of everything we don't want. And they just said, we don't want a cathedral, we don't want a modern church. They told me what not to do, but they said, we have a new problem. If the latest thing I've built is that curbside pavilion, same thing. They said, we need a presence which is from the internet in the physical world.
Okay.
So my specialty is always new problems. I don't really do well with old problems.
Okay. Okay, let me take you on the other side. I want the other people to see you. Can you give me the next question, guys? Mobility allows us to go out to meet others, to expand our horizons. We have a philosopher here with this question. Okay, it has many different dimensions. What's the most important for you?
Well, I think it's not what's important for me. I think it's what's important in the world. And I really do think it's the size of things.
Okay.
I mean, we've been talking now for a few months about how cities like Milan are getting more and more congested and more traffic. And like Sasha was saying, if you want products on demand, it means there's more and more elements moving. So either things have to get smarter so they know where to be, or they have to get smaller, or they probably have to do both. Okay. And I think for me, the mobility problems are really how to make things intelligent and how to get them as small as you can get them. Because we need more, definitely more things on the infrastructure, which is very limited.
Got it. There was this, Seth Godin was saying, small is the new big, so
yeah.
It's true also in architecture. Next question, we have just a couple of minutes, and we just run through it. All right, this is in Italian, I will translate it for you. Design is improving our life. Will the future have more accessible costs? Will the future be, cheaper to produce design?
Yeah, it's sometimes a shock to me how we're willing to pay €1,000 for a telephone, which to me would have been unthinkable. If you would have said 10 years ago, I'd say,
come on.
So many other things I'd spend $1,000. But I think if you can take the intelligence of that phone and put it into other things, you're immediately making them so much more valuable. And I really look forward to getting all of the technology that's in these devices, which we throw away almost annually, and getting it in the physical environment, and also getting it in the things that move in the physical environment. So for me, that's really the task, is how to take that kind of intelligence, put it in things maybe even more permanently, less disposably.
When you talk with the other Piaggio Fast Forward members, and I mean, it's a big contamination here. Different kind of skills, different kind of mentality, different visions about everything. Do you ever argue? I mean, and if you argue, okay, you will win because you are the stronger. But
I wish.
But no, how does it work? I mean,
we're very careful that we have one of everything, but not two of anybody.
I like it.
So nobody ever wins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no, we don't have any political parties in Piaggio Fast Forward yet. So it's really the best idea has to win, because there's no consensus, or nobody has an agenda, let's say, like from architecture or from experience or from the business. There's really one of everything that's in a discussion right now. That's what's really exciting about it.
Yeah, great, because then you get the best angles from all the skills.
Yeah, and we're really thinking from a clean slate. Like, we don't have to have a product ready for September. We don't have that kind of pressure that's forcing us to evolve something. We're starting fresh. So, and that's also what's very exciting, is to bring different people, start the discussion from a clean position, and try to come up with products which are relevant.
And the first product will be in 2026, probably.
No, then we're dead.
You'll get it there. I think pretty soon, from what I understand.
Very quickly.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Marco.
Thank you so much.
Real
Really
pleasure.
cool, huh? Ok, corriamo. Architetti, chi sono gli architetti in sala?
Okay,
Datemi un
who
segno
are
di
the
vita, o
architects in the
studenti
room? Can you
anche.
raise your
Ok,
hand, or
ci sono.
students in architecture?
Perfetto.
Who are they?
Allora,
Very well then.
molto bene. Prossimo
Excellent.
ospite,
So we have
grande
our
esperienza
next
internazionale
guest,
in
enormous
diverse
international experience
multinazionali.
in various
La loro esperienza,
multinationals,
l'ultima
their
società
experience, the
segue,
last company he's
hanno una
been
grande
following,
esperienza nella gestione di
boasts
siti
a
complessi.
great experience in the management of complex
Miniere,
sites. So
grattacieli,
imagine
dove devi
mines,
informatizzare dei
skyscrapers,
posti
where
che è
you
un
have to
casino, e
computerize,
loro
a
arrivano
lot
e
of
devono
things, and
capire
they come and they
esattamente il
must
da farsi,
understand
e peraltro
immediately what
alcuni
should
video
be
molto
done.
interessanti.
And there are
Un
some
grande
very
applauso,
interesting
prossimo ospite,
videos.
Doug
So a
Brent.
round of applause for Doug Brent, our next guest.
Hey Doug, how you doing? Welcome, welcome. You're important? I'll see you later.
So, Marco, I don't speak Italian. You said distinguished, good-looking. I'm just trying to understand what my introduction.
I just said, you know, unfortunately now it's coming,
Okay,
Doug.
okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to work my way down to the end of the hall here. I think we're here today to talk future. This is what I think we're here to do today. And I think we imagine a future that has autonomous vehicles, virtual reality, where the world sort of creates the products and brings things to us that we need. And I guess what I want to talk to you about today is I think 1.0, the version 1.0 of that future is actually already here. And I'm going to use as an example my experience, which is in this big industrial world. I say if it gets you dirty, then I'm excited about it. That's an interesting product. And so let's go over some of these things. Not a success so far. Internet of Big Things. So we all heard this term, Internet of Things. Some of our other distinguished panelists have been talking about this for decades. Internet of Things is not a new idea. Internet of Big Things is maybe a different way to think about it. Let me ask the audience, this picture in the upper right-hand corner with those monitors, anyone know what that is? Anyone would care to guess what that is? Television, well, that's not exactly right, Margot. So those screens, those three, and actually you can find some with 7, is the inside of a modern farm tractor. So you can sort of see in the background all that green. That's what a modern farm tractor looks like today. I think you know on the left there's a big long-haul truck, big piece of Caterpillar equipment. I'll talk in a second about that one on the bottom. Each of these things are connected devices. If you look at long-haul trucking in the United States, there's something like 2 million long-haul trucks that are connected to the internet right now today. These kinds of heavy equipment, we'll talk about that a little more, are also widely connected, and farms today are connected. So why is that? Why would they want to be connected? That these devices, pretty much for this Internet of Big Things idea, it's tracking, it's tracing, it's sensing, maybe how much water is being produced, and it's used as a form of individual optimization for that machine. We care to be in a world where we're using less energy, where things are more efficient, more productive, and that's why these machines are connected. If you look in the bottom right, I come from California, this is extremely important to us right now, is water. Water is a key resource for us. These are big 20-meter-long watering systems on a farm, and it turns out each nozzle, each place where water is emitted is individually controlled by this Internet of Big Things to ensure you're using just the water you need. The farmer actually gets a water map of their farm and only waters the portions that are dry. So step one, I think, of creating this future that we talk about is connectivity. And with millions of devices around the world, we're not quite ready yet there on the consumer world, but in this industrial world, that really already exists. So I'm going to use the term 3D printing a little different than Greg. Greg is right. I'm stretching things a little bit here. But when I talk about 3D printing, I'm talking about the automated processes that change the world. And I like that picture on the left-hand side of the big Caterpillar dozer saying, I'm a 3D printer too. How is that possibly true? Well, this 3D printer, by the way, I think that's about a 75,000 euro 3D printer, receives instructions wirelessly on how to move dirt, how to create the world around us, and then can automatically execute on that. Now, if you look, probably for many of you it won't be that exciting, but if you look at the top of that blade, you'll see these two yellow masts sticking up. What those yellow masts have on the, is a positioning system. It's a GPS, GNSS-based positioning system that will give resolution of centimeters or millimeters on the accuracy of exactly where that blade is, so that both the orientation of the blade as well as how high it is off the ground, it can ensure that it's moving the right dirt. So just, again, imagine this. It's getting a model, a 3D model of the ground. It's positioning itself in the world and then moving the dirt to achieve the desired result. To me, 3D printing. Greg, are you okay with that? All right, so we're still okay. There's going to be a quick video clip. It'll move by pretty quickly, but I want you to look at that picture in the upper right-hand side. So may not be that exciting just to watch in video, but so why is this important? Again, I think we care about saving resources. We care about doing things efficiently. We want nice, smooth roads. Think about a runway at an airplane. You want this to be nice and smooth. Again, this is done completely automatically, and by having an automatic 3D printed road, you can end up saving millions of tons of material because you can hit the design spec, you can hit the local municipal requirements, but you don't have to use anything extra. This one, again, may be a little bit loud looking on the bottom right-hand side. That was not intended. So that musical interlude was not an intended part of the presentation, but maybe it woke everyone up. It woke me up a little bit. But the idea there was that if you look at this long stretch, when a farmer's getting ready to prepare a field for farming, one of the things they have to do is ensure the water will flow correctly. Again, they have a 3D model of the terrain of their farm. They can send the program to that machine who's going to cut the path and ensure that you get a very nice, and you can see this over quite a distance, a well-groomed path so the water flows the right way. Again, minimizing resource, doing this in the most efficient way possible. So step one, we have connected machines. Step two, we can send programs to them to effectively make them 3D printers. The third step is how do we orchestrate mini machines? So much more typical than seeing a single machine or a single person or a single vehicle is we have lots of things all operating together. So if you look at a big farm in North America, you'll see many devices all out there at one time, and it actually can be a pretty scary place to be. You don't want to be in front of any of those vehicles. So the question is not only how do you optimize any one, but how do you orchestrate across those vehicles to ensure you get the right answer? I'm going to show a video. I hope maybe the volume, if there is music on this, could be turned down a little bit so we're not too excited again. But if you look in the upper left-hand corner, that woman who looks quite happy, this is a Volvo idea about orchestrating vehicles. So she takes her hands off the wheel.
It looks like a normal truck with another truck and 3 passenger cars behind it. In fact, this is the first time ever that the Sartre project tests a road train on a normal motorway in everyday traffic conditions.
I think it's really impressive.
So this is, I think, an interesting form of orchestration. We talk about autonomy. No doubt autonomy will come, absolutely no doubt. There's no technology limitation. There's still a lot of hard work to do. This is a different way of orchestrating, which is I can have a human, a smart driver in front of this train of vehicles. That smart driver then becomes the orchestration means. So we can put a little human intelligence, but still get all the benefits. If you're in one of the following cars, you have all the aerodynamic benefits. I can fall asleep. I can take my hands off the wheel. One more example, and again, watch a little bit on the volume. Look in the upper right-hand side. This machine looks very scary. And actually, you don't want to go anywhere near it. This is how sugarcane is harvested. And the farms are gigantic. In Brazil, they have 2,000-kilometer square farms where these vehicles operate 24 hours a day, just like an outside manufacturing facility. And watch how these vehicles work together. So you see, the goal is achieved not by just one cutting, and I've actually been out there on those fields, and again, you don't want to be that close. It's not only the one cutting machine, there has to be a receiving machine for that material as well. They want to work together, and then there's hundreds of these kinds of machines all over a farm. Last example, it's not a movie, so you don't have to protect your ears, but is this picture of all these construction cranes. If you want to get videos of some of the most fantastically destructive YouTube videos you could ever see, just search for construction crane in YouTube. You can look at this work site and say, how do you avoid these cranes hitting each other? Essentially, each of those act as an elevator to bring up material. How would I decide how the material gets stationed so that it's most efficiently ready right now for the manufacturing process? We don't have an answer for that yet, but this is an area, again, where orchestrating all the job site work becomes very important, and it's something people are working on right now. So just to move a little more quickly, clearly the purpose of this orchestration is not just to move things around, but allow people who are doing work to get to more answers that they're interested in instead of just data. So this is the one on the left, where it says Connected Farm, is a farmer's screen. Today, what a farmer looks at is, how do I plant my field? Ultimately, if you look at the left-hand side of this, it's what are the commodity prices right now? Where am I going to make the most money? What would I plant next? What kind of seed is being most productive? In my microclimate of my farm, how would I do that? So more and more, instead of combing through data, let the data tell the farmer what the right answer is. And that's the optimization. So to get this world where things can be made for us automatically, you need to have some way to design that world. And more, this can't just be drawing lines, architects drawing lines or designers drawing lines. And I'm just going to go over one of these examples based on time. And if you look on the right-hand side in the bottom, that's what an open pit mine looks like. These are gigantic. They can be a couple meters across. And it takes people about a month to design an open pit mine. All you need to know to design a mine is you need to know where the gold is, you need to know where the valuable material is, you need to know the rules for how wide the road has to be, how steep a bench has to be, and then tell the computer to design it for you. And we've actually gone through and changed this process of design such that knowing the answer you want, not just the data, tell me where the gold is, will design mines like this in a matter of hours instead of months. Just looking at my clock. I will make a last comment on the left-hand side. If you look up at that picture where it says 3D warehouse, this is a place where 2.5 million 3D models are stored. And think about if you could go to redesign your kitchen, instead of just talking about a new dishwasher or a new oven cooktop, you could pick out from the 3D warehouse exactly the one you wanted with all the information about thermal loading, how much heat is this going to put in your house, exactly how will it connect up with all the other parts in your house, and make this design, part of the smart design to be executed on automatically. So the last one, again, being a little provocative on use of words like this 3D printing, is instrumented reality. We've all heard of virtual reality. So that's basically Oculus Rift or others. I'm wearing something on my eyes that creates a virtual world. Problem would be if I was wearing Oculus Rift right now, I wouldn't feel that comfortable walking up and down this runway. I might trip. So there are these devices that are more focused on augmented reality, or the term Microsoft uses, mixed reality. If you look in this upper left, the little elephant in the hand, this is a company that's not an announced company yet, Magic Leap, but if you look on the web, you'll find a lot of information about Magic Leap. Google and two VCs last year put $500 million into this company to really be delivering a practical version of augmented reality. In the lower left-hand corner, you see a Google Project Tango, and actually the company I work for, Trimble, worked with Google as a partner on commercial applications of this. Now, what's interesting is if you look at that picture, you can sort of get the feeling that that device is mapping the world around it, not just visualizing information on top. And that's what I mean by instrumented reality. For augmented reality to work, I need to be able to map the world around me to put the objects in the right place. I'm going to end with a 1-minute video and it's about Microsoft HoloLens and gives you an idea of this. If you haven't seen HoloLens, if you're a student, go look at this. But it's a computer, essentially, that you wear on your head that allows you to see the virtual objects in real context.
In the real world, you get the physical model as a focus point for the team to collaborate around. And you get the hologram with the flexibility, with the ability to run quick iterations.
You'll see how we've brought in the courtyard that you suggested. You see that mouse go off the screen into holographic space, and you're then interacting with the hologram, with the mouse.
The thing that we can do for architects is really give them much higher confidence around decision making. One way we can do that is we can allow them to literally immerse themselves in the scene that they're building and see street side how the building's going to look.
Visualizing design data in the context of the real environment is a much better way to make sure that the design is implemented correctly on site.
Microsoft HoloLens allows you to collaborate with somebody regardless of distance, like they were there. Hello there.
Hey, Igor, where they're trying to put this door, there's a beam behind here.
I'm looking at this beam. We're interacting with it about a problem that we can see and being able to solve that problem with all the data that we need in front of us in real time.
So I'll just finish by saying the very first tweet, or one of the very first that I saw go by on the screen, said the future is here. And I think the version 1.0 is here, and Piaggio Fast Forward will help with version 2. Thank you very much.
Good job, Doug. Good job. Look at this. All right. By the way, before your presentation, we were almost there, on Twitter, these Twitter trends.
Yeah.
After your presentation, we are in Italy, top Twitter trends.
Okay,
just a big applause to all of you because you did it. So good. You gave the final edge.
All right.
Very interesting, very interesting. Also, this I watched a few videos of Magic Leap online.
Yes.
Very interesting. I mean, they create this virtual reality, and you can change things. Okay, let's get some questions from the audience.
Please.
And we try to see how it goes. By the way, did you know that tractor videos online are some of the most watched videos ever?
I thought only by me. I love this tractor stuff. I don't even think I said that in North America today, more than half of all tractors are automatically guided. Humans are not allowed to actually steer these because it's so precise in terms of how it traverses the field, how much seed is used, how much fertilizer is used. So I think tractors are, Milan level sexy, I think, very much.
All right, cool. Lots of data everywhere. How to make them business-oriented? We were talking about big data also before, but this is more focused. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that this is a huge challenge. People, data is critical, but more than data, people want answers. And I think that it takes domain knowledge, domain expertise, so knowing your business area to help people not focus on the data, but get to the answers.
Okay, got it. A quick recap in Italian.
Yeah, please.
Sometimes I really want to focus on it. Il punto secondo me importante
the most important point about Doug's presentation is the connectivity through all objects. Some years ago, we started talking about Internet of the Things, and people were saying, well, this is the usual buzzword and so on. But the truth is that all objects are now connected. Otherwise, you can't do the things such as the ones that Doug has showed us.
Could I just give a quick example on that?
Sure, please.
So one of the things people want to know when they look at a job site, there's 200 companies putting up a building. How far along is it? How am I on schedule? How am I on budget? And actually, there's approaches right now where people are using computer vision and computer models to answer that question, as opposed to working through a schedule and adding it all up. It's like, where am I right now, and how's my budget right now?
Can I ask you, Doug?
Yes.
Before this question.
Yes.
What's the most difficult project that you ever had tackle? Mines, skyscrapers. What is that?
I would say computer software is the most difficult challenge ever. But just an interesting little.
That never works.
Yeah. But in building construction today, around the world, we're not talking Italy, we're talking U.S. and around the world. About 40%, 40, is waste.
Okay.
40 is waste because of you know, someone's not ready to receive a part, the part doesn't come on time, designs change. This seems like a huge global opportunity to do better, save resource, get things done cheaper, faster. So I think as a society, turning these building projects into something that, you know, we can really deliver is a huge challenge.
Got it. Interesting. Which are the hardest problems to be solved in consumer vehicles autonomy? I take you there so that also people there can watch you. I don't give you my arm.
No, but okay, but we'll go like this. Yeah. So I think that we were talking about this yesterday, and I won't say it's the hardest problem, but I will say it's a problem, which is what are the expectations of the people who are pedestrians surrounding these autonomous vehicles? I was in an autonomous vehicle, big California streets, big, busy streets. The vehicle is getting ready to make a right-hand turn. People are standing on the corner, clearly getting ready to walk across the street when the light turns green. The car, unfortunately, knows nothing about this. The light turns green. The car starts to turn into the people.
Right.
Still some improvements to make.
Okay, gosh. But do you think we're getting there anyway? But it's maybe more a collaboration than a total autonomous. I don't know if I would like. Can I ask the people, would you like a car that completely drives by itself? I mean, that you can't do anything, you can't even move a little bit, you know, just let me do something, no? Is it true or not, or is it only me? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
But so I think the great debate, it's so fun that we're debating now, is this 5 years from now or 15 years from now?
Right.
We're not debating, will this happen? Right. It's definitely going to happen.
Okay. So next question, HoloLens.
Yes.
Augmented reality devices and mobility. Which aspects of it? By the way, guys, it's the first time that I see the questions. I never read the question, just to let you know. Which aspects of experience are the strong and which the weak ones? Okay.
So we've actually worked closely with Microsoft on HoloLens. I will say it is an incredibly visually rich experience. And for me personally, it's one of the few things in the last 12 years, you know, I'm not a millennial, you may be able to tell. One of the last things I've seen in the last 12 years is really just, wow, this is an all-new experience. So the visual experience is incredible, but I can't even use my thumbs to type. So it's just a very different mix of capabilities.
But how does it work? You have like some kind of glasses and you see in front of you holograms, basically.
It's basically seeing objects in the real world that I can walk around that object, I can see it from 3 dimensions, and it actually is quite stable and creates the illusion that that object is actually part of the reality I'm in.
How far we are from that kind of thing being reality, being in our hands? What do you think?
I mean, you ask Microsoft for a demo today. It's not actually a product.
I'll call Bill later.
But you know, Google and others invested $500 million in a company last year to do this. Microsoft's doing it. Others are. This is a very near-term phenomena.
Cool. Let's see if we have a final question, maybe from our. Okay, I think probably we're done. Very good. So, Doug, it was really a pleasure. Doug Brand, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ok, allora. Prossimo ospite. Per me è un ospite importante.
To me,
perché per colpa sua o per merito suo, non lo so, ho iniziato a entrare nel mondo internet.
Because of
faccio un
him,
nel mondo
I
digitale
entered the internet world. I am a digital businessman. I was a lawyer. I was studying law. And then I read a book. My uncle gave it to me. And he said, look at this book. I read this book, Being Digital. So I read this book and I thought, wow. 1998.
Proprio come dire una sfera di cristallo e vedi esattamente cosa succede.
What happened, what is happening today was like reading a crystal ball. So I was reading this book and then I had to decide whether I was going to be a lawyer or whether I wanted to change. He was talking about the internet, all these things. And then I said, okay, let's change. No, I said, let's not change because this will never happen. But then, in 1997, the internet actually came out. And then I said, wow, you really hit the spot. Because that was not mass internet. So then I said, okay, let's change everything and let's enter the digital world. So this is the book that really triggered everything. This incredible guest. Huge round of applause, Nicolas Negroponte.
Hi, Nicholas.
Do you have the clicker?
Yeah, that's for you.
Okay.
That's for you. I'll let you do your presentation. I just want to let you know that I started my digital career because of you. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but after reading Being Digital,
But you're a
that
journalist.
happened. Yeah.
You're a journalist.
No, I'm not.
You're
I'm
not.
a tech entrepreneur.
You
yeah.
are?
Yeah, but
Well, you do this very well.
Thank you so much. I'll see you later.
Okay. I'm going to be a little different than the previous speakers because I'm not going to show you images. I'm going to tell you about 5 concepts. And if you remember 2 of them, when you leave, I'll be very happy. But let me warn you in advance that you may not agree with them, and some of you might feel slightly insulted. Now, by way of a story, a personal story, when I was in high school, which is too long to remember, most of you weren't born, I did very well in art, and I did very well in mathematics. In fact, I was the best in my class, even in my school, for both. So I went to the headmaster, and I said to the headmaster, look, I'm good in mathematics, and I'm good in art, so obviously I should go study architecture. Now, this headmaster was very smart, and he said something to me which I did not understand for a decade. He said, I like striped suits, and I like gray suits, but I don't like gray striped suits. And I completely missed the point. I studied architecture. I loved it dearly. I practiced sort of in summers. I went back to graduate school, and I discovered that the mixture of art and mathematics was computers. And that computers was that intersection. And so for me, that's how I got started. And again, by just way of personal introduction, probably the only advantage of age is that I have been to the future many times, unlike some younger people. And I say that because I cannot tell you how many times I have said in my life, in 10 years, this will happen. Well, guess what? The 10 years came. And it either happened sooner or later or so on. And then you say, well, in 10 years, this will happen. And when you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and sometimes right, maybe even often right, I might get the timing wrong, but you feel like you've been there. So there are things you see today that are extraordinarily, in my mind, mindless, because it's people who haven't been to the future who are doing it as if there was no past. So I'm going to, first of all, declare, and you don't have to agree, that biotech is the new digital. For those of you who saw a very old movie called The Graduate, where Dustin Hoffman is taken aside and told, young man, go into plastics. Well, plastics in the 1950s was indeed a wonderful area of material science and engineering, and many things evolved. And digital is the plastics of today. Biotech and that whole world is the digital of tomorrow. And we will not just be informed by nature, we will do better than nature. We will do much better than nature. There will eventually be no disease, no disabilities, and in fact, the only spin-out of the Media Lab that I think will get traction is one we're starting right now, which is called the Center for Extreme Bionics. And the faculty doing it are determined to eliminate all human disabilities, mental and physical, and to do that within their lifetimes. They're quite young. We have another faculty member who believes that you can make complex things like motorcycles and automobiles out of one part. Not a few parts, one part. And that part isn't a 3D produced car. That you can do already. You could actually 3D produce a car with wheels and all the rest. It's by dropping a seed into the ground and a car grows. It's by doing it in a very, very different way. And the world of biotech is going to allow us to do things that aren't just traditional biotech and medical tech and so on. I'll give you one last example. I was provoked at a TED talk. I've given 18 TED talks. And they said, prepare for the TED talk. I said, what do you mean prepare for the TED talk? I've never prepared for a TED talk, let alone any talk in my whole life, including this talk. So why am I going to prepare for a TED talk? And they said, well, you've got to give a prediction. I said, I don't give predictions. I just extrapolate. And so finally, after I had used my 18 minutes, and I haven't given a prediction, they pulled me back, and they said, you've got to give a prediction. And my prediction, which isn't fantasy, it's actually based on some pretty deep discussions, is that in the future, you will be able to swallow a pill and learn English. Or anything else you want, because the best way to get into the brain is through the bloodstream. The bloodstream gets you basically to every neuron. So whatever you believe of where things live as information, somewhere in your head there is English or a processor that creates English. So clearly I could deposit in the brain at the right locations whatever is necessary. Incrementalism. Incrementalism is the enemy of creativity. And as one of the things that I will be on thin ice is to argue that startup companies are a serious global problem because we have sucked very big talent out of big thinking. The Media Lab graduates 50 students a year. It used to be the case that half of them worked on big problems: fusion, eliminating poverty, working for human purposes that are about the betterment of mankind. And now they're all doing these silly little startups that tend to be apps on iPads and iPhones that flip money, and greed is an element, and doing something fun. But out of the 50 people now, only one goes off and works on a big, hard problem. And we're going to pay a price for that going forward. Competition. Competition is the root of almost all evil. Education in this world, and I assume Italy has the same problem, but I'll speak to the United States and speak to countries like China, Japan, and places that I know better. We have turned learning into a competition, and parents are complicit. Stop testing. Stop killing children with tests, because what you know doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. It's funny. It's always funny where you get the applauses, but and I'll give you a piece of evidence. In most of the world where they measure, and I hate measurement, if you have to measure an effect, it means it was too small. Self-evidence is the best measure. But if you do measure education, it turns out that Finland is at the top of the list almost every year, but by a long shot. It's not, just at the top. This number, the others are quite far behind. In Finland, kindergarten to first grade, no tests, none. No homework, none. Shortest days per year, shortest hours per day. You say, wait a minute. How can they have the best? They have none of the things. We want more tests, longer days, all these things. And the reason it's so good is because there's no competition. The kids collaborate. Learning is collaborative. Competition, especially between countries, is a sick concept. And it's at the root of a lot of evils. Now, missions versus markets. This is slightly more complicated because a mission is very different than a market. And most people don't understand the difference. And doing good as a corporation for genuine reasons actually is not what's going to help the world. Yes, if everybody's better, politer, and does things that are, quote, good, that, yes, would make a better place. But if your mission is education, then you have to, as a part of civic society, make it better. And what irritates me the most, in fact, I was in a room, in a meeting recently, where everybody in the room believed that people fell in two categories. There were entrepreneurs and there were philanthropists. Now, the entrepreneurs can be executives of big companies. The philanthropists could be doing little NGOs or running big foundations. And I said to them, I said, you're crazy. You have eliminated a third group, which is not a charity, it's not an entrepreneur, it is civil servants. And there's nobody in this room that has advocated to their children to go into civil society. There is nobody who thinks of it as a great thing to do, and yet civil society is what we really depend on. And when I wake up in the morning, I ask myself one question. Will normal market forces do what I am doing today? And if the answer is yes, then don't do it. I don't need to do it if normal market forces are going to do it. I need to do what normal market forces won't do. So let me end on my current pet project. I believe that connectivity, and I really should say access, because you may not have to be connected to somebody, but you need access, and it might be a more general word. But you need it not as a service that is an opportunity for a corporation. You need it as part of human rights, or at least a civic responsibility. Think of this for a second. You walk out the door after this meeting, and you're going to step on a sidewalk. The business model of sidewalks is not return on investment where you pay to walk down the sidewalk. A rich person walks down it, a poor person walks down it. And you depend on civic society for it to be clean, for it to be smooth, for it to be beautiful. You don't pay for it in a direct way. Guess what? You pay through it for it through what are called taxes. And that's part of civic society. And yet to connect to the internet, you have to pay for it, and it's not like a road. Well, it didn't used to be like a road. It used to be more like electricity or other things. The more you consume, the more you pay. But that's the past. And particularly in the developing world, the future is to make that part of civil society. And I'm working very hard as I can to do that, but my problem is that it has been such a successful business. if you look at the 10 richest people in the world, look at them and count how many made that from telecommunications. It's a very profitable business. The Bangladesh telephone company, cell phone company, had $2 billion of income last year. $1 billion was profit. Where did the profit go? The profit went back to the shareholders. Very little went back into the network. And we may have to rethink what can be done in the public sector and not always assume that the public sector can't do anything. And if you think the public sector can't do anything, ride a train in Switzerland. In Japan, the Shinkansen total lateness of all the trains combined over 1 year was 18 seconds. Okay, you can run things if you put your mind to it as part of civil society. So I will end with that, and maybe in the Q&A you can devastate it.
You know what's amazing for me, honestly. It's 18 years now that I'm doing stuff online, and I did interview so many people, as you know. I mean, you were also my guest in my television show on Sky News, and this was one of the most inspiring talk, guys, that I ever heard in my recent years. Honestly, it was. Just a quick in Italian.
Okay.
Ne ha dette un paio adesso, io non voglio dire.
Well, he said a couple of things that.
Mangi una pillolina e impari
Well, he said,
l'inglese tra poco. Quindi
you swallow a pill and you will learn
fai
English.
un seme, lo metti giù e
Then
viene
you
fuori
get a
un'automobile.
seed, you plant it,
Quando
and
ha
you get a
scritto
car.
Being Digital, diceva solo
When he
cose
wrote
così, e
Being
molti
Digital,
secondo
he
me
was
pensavano,
writing
capito,
things
che
like that,
fosse
and
un
many
po'
people thought that he was
Però la
he
verità è che
was
questi sono veramente,
rather
quindi
crazy.
metterei molto
But then
volentieri.
everything
Vai, Nicholas, join me, please.
became reality. So
Let's check a few questions. We just have a few minutes, and then we almost at the end of the event. Okay. If you give me a few questions for Nicholas. So which is the most exciting development in transportation? First, Nicholas, can I ask you a very stupid and curious question?
Yes.
I love your shoes. They are amazing. I never saw. What kind of shoes are not like mine?
Come on. It's Prada.
Okay, well, but what is a mix between a sport shoe and a classic shoe? Okay.
I have little motors inside them.
Okay. No, really. Have you ever worn? I've never seen any shoe like that. Okay, cool. Sorry, it was my stupid curiosity. So, which is the most exciting development in transportation?
Oh, depends how you measure excitement. I was Dean Kamen's first investor in the Segway, and I lost all my money. So that's exciting, I guess. I think perhaps the most exciting things have to do with not having to move. In fact, I find it's possible now to not move in cases where I used to have to move. And I sort of think of those as pretty exciting.
All right. So moving without moving, basically something like that.
It's moving without motion.
All right. Wow, that's also, I have to process now this topic, guys. Okay, good. Next question. Very interesting. Why did Segway didn't work? Because it sounded like a great idea also for mobility. I mean, I don't understand why it failed, by the way.
It's a long story.
Okay. Nicholas, in your life, we have a very educated audience, you see. Mm-hmm. They tweet with your name. I love it. Great challenges, insights, successes, and amazing risks. What surprises you? Wow.
Oh, my goodness. I guess there's what surprises me the most is the degree to which people are risk adverse, and particularly parents.
Okay.
it used to be, as recently as 10 years ago, that if your child went to art school, you would look at your spouse and say, oh, what did we do wrong? Okay. And that's changing. Business school is dead. It's on the way out. It'll be gone.
Let me explain to the business school students here.
Well, art school, if there are business school students here, I'm sorry for you.
Except Bocconi, all the others.
I don't care which business school. Design school and art school are going up.
Okay.
And the business people want the designers. They want the people who have the best kind of vision. And the best vision is peripheral vision, not foveal vision. And you get foveal vision at business school, and you get peripheral vision at design school. That's being a little simplistic. But
right. So is basically the same as when you say like an expert generalist, not to be focused only on one thing, but to have a view, different angles, different.
Yes, we call it being anti-disciplinary.
Okay, right. Follow me down there. I want the people down there to see you. Can you give me the next questions? Okay. The challenge is to connect the last billion people. Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Why? How this will impact on innovation and entrepreneurship? I remember in Tunisia 1 year you were presenting the one laptop per child. By the way, amazing project. It's a project to connect all the children in places where there is no connection. Super. And how is it going? How is it progressing?
Well, I've been out of it for about 3 years.
Okay.
There are, when I last looked, about 50 million laptops in the hands of children who would have never gotten them.
Wow.
We produced only 3 million of those, sort of the first 3 million. But then we did something. I would go to the governments and I would say, launch a bid for 1 million laptops for Brazil or for Thailand or wherever. And I will bid, and we figured out what we could. I'll bid $150. But more importantly, I would leak my bid to the press.
Okay.
So everybody would know how much I'm bidding, and so they had to bid lower.
Okay, cool.
And so it brought the price way down. Now, we had to be prepared to do it if we won the bid, and we always did so. But that was, in some sense, more powerful than the 3 million first laptops that actually bring the bid down. And the answer to the question on the screen is really easy when you substitute the word connect with the word educate or learning or some word that elevates society. And the impact, whether it's innovation, entrepreneurship, population growth, environmental, you name it, they're all impacted. So the tool to impact any big problem, elimination of poverty, I mean, you name the problem, and I promise you that education is a piece of the solution, and in some cases, it may even be the total solution.
Okay, got it. Let's see maybe a final question, if you have 1 more minute. By the way, Nicholas, I'm curious about, you think in a different way, you know. My mind is not working like your mind, so I'm curious, how do you develop this way of seeing problems with such a broad vision, or to see, okay, in 20 years will happen this? What would you suggest?
Well, if I had to do everything all over again, I would still go to architecture school.
Okay.
And I think architecture prepares you to look very widely. The term problem solving makes me sick. Who cares about problem solving? What I care about, and as architects do, where are you? There he is. We care about question asking. And we very often say, well, that's actually not the problem. The problem is something else. And then the problem's something else. So problem solvers are narrow people that solve problems.
Sure.
And I enjoyed, through architecture and other means, and then I also had, by complete chance, out of my control, I was born to a family that was historically rich, educationally rich. We lived a very interesting, multicultural life. So I'm kind of the opposite story. You hear so many people who went from, poverty to wealth. I came from wealth, and I didn't have to aspire. We're four brothers, and none of us went into business. None of us went into business. One's a civil servant, one's a filmmaker, one's a painter. So our parents put something in the water that said, you don't have to go and do something commercial. You can do something. And by the way, after the age of 25, I never received a penny from my parents. On my 30th birthday, I got a $500 check. But it was the illusion of wealth and the fact that you could, and then confidence. Confidence. If you can give your children confidence,
they will find
there's nothing else.
Got it. I like it. Yeah, maybe final question. No, we ran out of time. Okay, that was really, really inspiring. Nicholas, follow me here, because I would like now to end the event by calling all the speakers on stage. Come on. Do we have one more? Wait. We have one more minute for a final question for Nicholas. Yes or no? You want a final question for Nicholas? Yes or no? All right, come on. All right, individuality is what society breeds, but we are dependent on each other yet. How to bring back collectivism? Just a small question.
No, it's a very good question, and if individuality is created at the expense of collaboration, then you're in trouble. But individuality need not be at that expense, and we can become a collaborative society. You may know I am 100% Greek, even though I have an Italian name. By 100%, I mean the grandparents, great-grandparents, forever. And Greece is a country that's not collaborative, and that's one of the reasons it's having economic problems. The United States is a little bit more collaborative, but greed has gotten into the way. So it's not clear what's going to happen to the collective good. When you look, I just want to make one last comment, which is so important, I'm not sure why I forgot it before. But if you look at these lists that they make each year, which you may not believe in, I don't really believe in them, but the richest country, the happiest country, the most productive country, and they have these lists.
Top chart, yeah.
There's a chart each year, and different countries win and so on. For the past 10 or 20 years, at least since I've been looking at them, out of the top 10 countries, 8 are socialist countries. Think about that. 8 of those countries are socialist countries. And the happiest countries in the world are using something which in the United States, when I tell people I'm a socialist, which I am, they don't know the difference between that and a communist. In other words, they don't see it as part of a mission to elevate society and to work as a unified entity for the well-being of everybody. And I think that you can be an individualist in a very socialist society.
All right, got it. Nicholas, just follow me. By the way, when...
That's what you said last time.
Yes, yeah. I'll try again, because every time I would like to ask you something more, but it's over. When the event is over now, I'll go around and say that there will be a pill that you can eat and learn a language. Is it true? I mean, otherwise everyone will say Marco is not true.
No, it's definitely true. But will it happen in 15 years or in 30 years? And those are the questions. Like, when will autonomous vehicles happen?
Right.
Not before 5, but not more than 10. So you have a 5-10 year window that'll happen for sure. The pill I'm talking about is more 15 to 30 year window, and
All right, that's very interesting. All right, so I would like to call on stage all the speakers. Please give them a big round of applause. Jeffrey Schnepp. Then we have, all right, Greg Lean, Sasha Hoffman, Beth Altringer. Just come here, come here, come here. 1, 2, 3. Doug Brandt. Roberto Colaninno.
You should be in the center.
And by the way, Roberto, I saw here...
I have a friend to introduce to you, if allowed to me.
Ok, c'è un amico di Roberto. Who we have here? Okay. Hi. Jeff Linnell from Google. Big round of applause. Come here 1 second with me. So, Jeff is in the advisory board, right?
Sì.
So, advisory board of Piaggio Fast Forward. And by the way, you know, guys, when I said Gravity movie, the inventor of technology, guess who is? It's this man, you know, is the guy. Stunning project, stunning project. Just, you know, Jeff, just what's exciting, what's the most exciting technology for you in mobility in the next years? Just curious about that.
That's interesting. I actually think it's not an exciting technology. I think it's the combination of a lot of technologies right now where we're at. It's sort of the confluence of sensor technologies that allow us to do things like autonomy, the idea of advanced materials where we have composites where we can make a chair that can hold 3,000 pounds but weighs 6 ounces. 2,000. Oh, I'm propping you up. So, you know, there's a lot going on technically at the moment. We've also got some interesting aspects societally where we've got a sharing economy where we can leverage higher value assets that we can all use together and have them at exactly the right time and the right place in a frictionless way. So I think it's the mixture of all these things that are coming together that actually gives us tremendous opportunity. Electric vehicles, low emissions. We've got lithium-ion power with power to weight ratios that are radical. We have cars that can do 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3 seconds. It's in some ways this is democratization of extreme joy, depending on whether that you enjoy that or not. I certainly do. So I think it's actually the combination of what's going on in society and the technologies that are creating this focal point at the moment to really do something that is evolutionary and not merely incremental in mobility.
Got it. Very good, Jeff. Is any secret thing that you're working at Google that you can tell us? Come on, no one is listening, just this.
Secret.
Okay. All right, Jeff Linnell, thank you so much, Jeff. And final, ultimo avviso in italiano. Abbiamo predisposto un muro.
Okay, we have prepared a wall. You see it there. It's the fast forward idea, and you have post-its such as the one that you see here. And we invite everybody to leave your feedback, leave your idea, leave your comment on the event in a very open manner. And then maybe we can all take a picture together, or I'll offer you a digital coffee. So you will find all of the post-it there, and so the floor is yours, Roberto, to close the event.
Abbiamo in concreto
I think that in concrete terms we have shown what we want to do, what we can do, a group of extraordinary brains working together on the basis of their convictions of how the future will be. Starting off from reflections, thoughts which are based on culture, which lay their foundations on knowledge, on experience, on risk-taking, also on open-mindedness, on the fact of being, in a certain way, different from mere individuality. We want to be together, we want to put everything together, because the value of this being together is really enormous. Thank you very much, Mr. Colaninno. We have finished, but before closing, I wanted to devote to all of you who have been with us until the end a round of applause, and good luck for everything. Thank you very much for being here with us today. Thank you.